Keep
Welcome
that up.
everyone to episode 54 of the Looks Like a Movie podcast. My name's Kevin. I'm here with Doug and Owen, and today we're going to be talking about Madam Web. But of course, we can start with what we watched this past week.
Doug, what'd you watch?
Doug, would you like to go first? Yeah.
Doug,
Me? What did I watch?
Yeah, you go first.
I've been
Owen.
busy and having some issues in my life, so I have look at the little spots in my wall. What the fuck? But
The holes in your wall?
yeah, there's like holes in my wall. Anyways, I've been like a little busy and having some issues in my real life. So I haven't been seeing a bunch of movies, but I watched on Valentine's Day. I watched Hitch.
The Bob
Which-
Giamatti movie.
Yeah, not
I got the
great.
DVD
I'm
for
gonna be
that movie.
honest. And then I watched. What else did I watch? Oh, and then that night I watched The Terminator.
Right. Which you
Shout
gave 5
out.
stars.
I gave 5 stars. I haven't seen the movie since I was a kid. I realized while watching
Good
it, and
movie.
like, So Owen wrote a review because Owen rewatched Star Wars: A New Hope, the first
Oh,
Star
yeah.
Wars movie. And he kind of wrote a review on Letterboxd where he was like, "These are the images that raised me," whatever. Like talking about like how like he's just so like very nostalgic about that. And that's part of why it's one of his favorite movies. And that's kind of how I felt about watching The Terminator. I was like, "Holy shit!" I really do feel like a little kid watching this right now.
Was that
because-
like on a lot? Just like growing up, it was just on.
Yeah,
all
my
the time?
mom would play that all the time. It's probably like I've probably seen it like upwards of 20 times, probably, just because I watched it so much as a kid. And rewatching it, like all those memories and stuff, like kind of rushed back, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, which sounds silly because also by rewatching it, The Terminator is kind of a insane like horror B indie movie that is crazy. And it's like super provocative and gross, and it's so awesome, man. That movie
Yeah,
rocks.
that makes sense how you turned out.
And then I watched, so I rewatched The Terminator, give that 5 stars, put that on my favorites list.
So
Is Terminator 2 on your favorites list as well?
Not right now,
You're
but I
gonna
need to.
rewatch it.
I'm gonna rewatch that too soon.
Yeah.
what's the percentage of James Cameron movies that you've seen and are on your favorites list?
It's getting
All of
up there.
them.
It's getting up there.
Wait, which one's not on there?
Terminator 2 is not on there.
Yeah,
Piranha 2 is obviously not on
Right.
there. And
Is that just
True
it?
Lies is not on there.
True Lies. Okay, I forgot about True Lies.
Unfortunate that True Lies isn't better, but
Does
it
he
is
have
what it is.
another
What can
movie?
you do?
Aliens, yes. but-
Aliens. Is it?
Then I hung out with some friends and we just watched The Great Gatsby. We were just scrolling on Netflix and The Great Gatsby showed up, and we were all like, should we throw this on? And we did, and we all had kind of a religious experience with the image. That movie is so good. I'm like so Baz Luhrmann tilled. I'm like all in on this guy's style.
You love him.
And then after that, it was kind of late, and then one of my friends was like, should we just watch Elvis right now? And then we just watched Elvis too. And I was like, man, I love movies so much. So we did that. And and then I watched the movie we're going to talk about today. So yeah.
Damn, you really had a bump in score for that one too, huh? You had Great
Bump
Gatsby.
in.
He had 2 stars before he just rewatched it.
Yeah,
Bumped
I
it all the way
did.
up to 4.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I mean it's like a good. I like it. It just like reminds me too much of like history class.
That's fair. I mean, I
I'm just
watched
thinking
it.
of that one Jay-Z song.
Oh, yeah. I think of that Lana Del Rey song that's in it. Oh my
That's
gosh.
true.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
is
just
that the last of
iconic,
yours,
you
Doug?
know?
Yeah,
Last of
that's
yours?
where I'm at. I'm caught up.
All right, Owen, what'd you watch?
So after we recorded the last week's episode of the podcast, I saw the entire Before trilogy on 35 millimeter,
Right.
which was pretty cool. Those movies rock. It was really cool to see them on 35 because, like, obviously those movies are known for their dialogue and their characters, but especially the first two look insane on 35. Like, they're really beautiful movies. So that was really cool. Linklater is really great. Then I didn't watch a lot for like a couple days because I was like, I shot my film on the 10th, And then once I shoot, I just kind of get in like edit mode where I'm editing. I do school, I get back to my dorm, and then I edit till like 2 a.m. and then go to sleep and then recycle until the movie's done. So I wasn't really watching a lot. I would really only watch like a random short film or something just to like keep my brain going. And then I actually came back to like it's my birthday, so I was coming back to my parents' house to like celebrate my birthday.
Everybody put an Owen happy birthday in the chat.
So I was
Everybody comment happy birthday, Owen.
I was
Everybody put
already
happy
gonna
birthday in the
come
comments.
back to my parents' house for like because we're gonna have dinner later and all that stuff. But I ended up coming back a little early because I was sick. So I was sick at my parents' house, so I started watching movies again because I wasn't like I'm not gonna edit when I'm sick. So I watched Paul Verhoeven's Hollow Man, which I like really love. It reminds me a lot of Ang Lee's Hulk, which is a movie that came out like 3 years later in the uses of like the screens. And also it's like it's an adaptation of the Invisible Man kind of dealio, which is like a movie that I really love. The older one, like the 30s one. So
not
it's
Leigh
like
Whannell's Invisible Man.
yeah. So like the Invisible Man is like a character that I really love. It's a different take on it. But I think it still has like the goofy kind of element of it. But you have Kevin Bacon in this like lab, and it's almost like very like Fantastic Four-y. But then it's like a perverted like horror film. It's so kind of genre bending and very interesting, but the images are really fantastic. So like that, I don't rewatch it, but like that might be one of my favorite films. And
Perhaps
then
time for you to watch Showgirls.
yeah, no, I'm gonna probably watch all of his movies in the next like month or two. And I'll
I
skip
definitely need to watch
skip
more as
one movie,
well,
but I
but-
watched Starship Troopers this morning because I was like, I'm gonna watch all of Paul Verhoeven's films because I watched RoboCop maybe a few months ago, and I was like, that was cool, but I don't really have any it didn't have like any effect on me like huge. Like I was like, oh, I need to watch all these guys movies. I'll revisit it later. It might have been just like I don't even remember the situation where I watched it. I just remember I did view it. But with Hollow Man, I was like, oh, this guy's really good. So I ended up watching Starship Troopers this morning, and that was another one where I was like, oh, this is really awesome because he uses a lot of interesting transitional stuff that reminded me like Speed Racer and Starship Troopers.
Oh wait, that's crazy.
Not as like psychotic as Speed Racer, but there's like some Speed Racer isms in I'm gonna stop saying that. I'm gonna stop. I can't do it. In the movie, the space movie with that Paul Verhoeven made
With the bugs in the bug movie?
yeah. There's like I don't know. There was like some of that in it, and I don't remember. Yeah, I guess I was also like the stuff I saw in Hollow Man and the stuff that I saw in Starship Troopers was like there's some elements of that I was trying to work on in the film that I'm working on right now. So I was like, I should watch this right now. And then last night I watched the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which is Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest.
Right.
And that movie
celebrate our news.
It was to celebrate our news.
We'll get there.
And we'll get there later. But I do I kind of want to talk a little bit because Doug was talking about the whole like thing I was talking about with Star Wars and how like the movies that kind of grow up and they're on all the time. And the Pirates movies are like an interesting example of, and I was talking about this with my mom, and I feel like there's movies that are on like all the time when you're growing up, but they're not movies you're necessarily like watching. Like there's movies that you watch all the time growing up, and then there's movies that like your parents would be like watching, and you kind of like know of them and you've seen bits and pieces of them because they're always playing. But like I never really like knew the Pirates movies that well, but like I knew them, like I've seen them all, but like I don't really know the plot of any. Like you know, they were just always on growing up. So
I
it's
was
been fun.
watching.
Yeah, well, it's definitely like I was just like at an age where like
Yeah.
I saw them and I was like, oh, I know Johnny Depp as that
Yeah.
role, and like I know that character. It was just something I wasn't really necessarily that too interested in.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't my favorite thing or anything. But I watched the first one a few months back, and I was really blown away by like Gore Verbinski's set pieces and his whole direction on these like massive blockbuster scale. And I planned to watch the other ones, but I didn't end up having the time to watch the second one until I decided to like. It was almost like a pop the champagne celebration moment last night for some news we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But that was my recent whole situation.
Yeah.
with
I
That's
do want to
interesting.
rewatch all of them.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I have like a similar experience to you, Owen, with I was like growing up with the Pirates movies because
Mhm.
I don't know what those movies are about either.
Yeah.
I remember like I watched them all as like all of them as a kid, obviously. Except for maybe the most recent one. I don't know when that one came out.
Well,
I might
so
have.
there's
2015.
three Gore Verbinski movies, and then
Yeah.
there's
And there's two more.
two other ones, and like the most recent one came out like 2017.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely did not see that.
Yeah.
Not a good
But
movie.
for sure, watch the three older
Mhm.
ones that Gore Verbinski did for sure as a kid. And like I obviously, you know, I like movies as a kid, so like I fond memories vaguely.
Yeah.
I don't really remember them at all, and that's kind of why I haven't seen them since I've grown up because it's like
Yeah. Well, it's
um,
weird because like the Lord of the Rings movies, like I remember so much more like more vividly growing up. And like those came out like a little earlier, but like same kind of time period, same like big
Right.
blockbuster movies. And they were probably on maybe a little more than the Pirates movies. But it's funny, like the movies that like stick very clearly in my brain. Whereas like the Pirates movies, it's more of like flashes, but I know they were on. Like I know
Yeah.
I've seen them growing up, but it's just like I couldn't tell you what happens in the third one or anything like that.
there's one shot in one of those Pirates movies where it's like they're pulling in to an area and there's like just guys hanging off of a bridge or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I really remember that very vividly as a kid, being like, "This is
Yeah.
fucked up."
No,
Like,
well, it's so crazy. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on these movies, and I'm not gonna talk about it too much. I'm just gonna. I think it's just. I was thinking about this when I was watching it. It's so crazy how a movie made. I think it's a 2006. So I mean, not even two decades ago. Not even 20 years ago yet. Made by Disney, like a blockbuster this size can have this much like weight and depth and like in terms of like the image and
Yeah.
like the set pieces and like you know it's so massive.
They're
The movie
so
feels
good.
huge
So good.
and like how like we've kind of shifted into whatever we are doing now, and we'll talk about that I guess more in the episode. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's like this is not this is not that far removed from like it was like we're talking about Disney now. Disney used to make like they used to come out with like good movies. Like
Yeah.
I don't think Disney still obviously Disney has like not been like a good moral company, but like no big company is.
Yeah.
But they actually used to make like decent movies. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up how far we've fallen because one of those, it was like the second or third Gore Verbinski
Mhm.
Pirates movie. It was like it had the most expensive production of all time. Like they were really like
Well,
these movies made a lot of money and like
I
Yeah.
mean,
They were a big deal. Like,
Yeah. Those
I
movies
remember
made
seeing
so much money, and I mean, rightfully so. Like, they're these big, sweeping movies that, like, you put a lot of money into, and the money is on the screen. Like,
Yeah.
it looks
And-
very expensive, and it's
and those movies like
massive.
single-handedly made like Johnny Depp from being like a big actor into like a movie star,
Oh,
you know.
like, that's
Like
yeah.
yeah, those movies are huge. I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
No, really good movies. It's interesting you brought up the Lord of the Rings thing because I think I'm on the reverse end with you guys where up until I rewatched Lord of the Rings like 2 years ago or whatever, I didn't really remember much
I
of it.
remember
And
going
Pirates of the Caribbean, I
with
remember
Hobbit
like
movies as
everything.
a kid, and when did the first Hobbit movie come out?
like
Oh, God, yeah,
2014.
I was like, I've never even
The
watched the
Hobbit.
Hobbit ones.
I think it was
But
2014.
The
Like
Hobbit came
Pirates,
out in
I was-
2012. I was
Oh.
9 years old in the theater watching the Hobbit movies. I remember that more
Yeah.
clearly than like seeing the Pirates movies growing
I
up.
was 9 years old. I
And
think
that
I was
movie
9 years
sucked.
old when the third Pirates movie came out. Was that 2009? I don't.
The
Anyway,
third
not
Pirates
important.
movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like those Pirates movies as a kid. I was playing the games and stuff. I don't know if you guys
Well,
played
so
the games.
I vividly
Best game
remember
ever.
the games more than the fucking movie, and I do that with a lot of things, like Indiana Jones and stuff like that. Like the video games, I remember more.
There's
than
like
movies.
the downloadable Pirates game, like the internet game. It was like a big open world Pirates game online. It was so
think I
fun.
played
I
that
played with
one.
like my friend and all his cousins and like all these people. And there was like
Yeah.
this hack that you could do to get the Black Pearl. Like it was like the most expensive
World's End
boat,
came out in
and you could do this
2007.
unlimited
That's
money
the
thing.
third
Okay.
one.
So I was in the theater when I was 7 watching that. But still, those movies rock. I will transition into what I watched. Right after recording, last week I watched Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. Classic, really good.
Oh yeah.
Jimmy Stewart, kind
Yeah, I
of
can't
the
see it.
goat. He fucking rocks every time he shows up in
yeah,
something. I'm
Jimmy's
just
great.
like, this guy is the coolest guy to ever be a guy.
Who's our modern Jimmy? Do we have a modern?
We
Jimmy
don't have
Stewart?
one.
I don't think we do.
There's just like we that space is not filled. I
that
don't think.
genre of man doesn't exist
No,
anymore.
like
No,
I
we really don't. I'm trying to think. We really
I
don't.
really don't think we do. I mean, I think we have somebody maybe like in the same vein as that, but like nobody can replicate the way that I feel when I see Jimmy Stewart show up in a movie. I'm like that. Like it's a lost art.
Because like the thing about Jimmy Stewart too is like, is there any actor that with so much confidence like that is younger?
He's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
He fucking rocks. That movie was really good as well. I rewatched two of my favorite movies. I rewatched Point Break, which just the great. We did the draft last week where I drafted the Point Break couple, so I figured it would be nice to rewatch it. Still just one of the best. And then I rewatched 10 Things I Hate About You, as I always do. And then on Valentine's Day, I bit the bullet and I watched Valentine's Day, which is, I haven't watched the New Year's Eve one, which I considered watching around New Year's Eve. Same director, same holiday movie with like 5,000 people in the cast. Valentine's Day, too many people.
What is that about? What is that movie about? What's that?
Valentine's Day?
Yeah.
It's about Valentine's Day.
I don't know these movies. I don't know.
It's just like, okay, pretty much it's I mean, you've seen like Love Actually, right? Or like these like you haven't seen Love Actually. Like rom-coms where they have like 9 million subplots. Sure. It's like that. It's like a Valentine's Day rom-com. It's kind of like Crazy Stupid Love.
Like sort of like an anthology thing that's like together though, like an different
one. The problem is that Valentine's Day had too many people in it. Like there was they hit the limit on how many famous people you could have in a movie. Let me just read this cast to you. Julia Roberts, Bradley Cooper, Anne Hathaway, Patrick Dempsey, Eric Dane, Jessica Biel, Emma Roberts, Taylor Swift, Jessica Alba, Jennifer Garner, Jamie Foxx, Shirley MacLaine, Ashton Kutcher, Kathy Bates, Queen Latifah, Taylor Lautner, George Lopez.
Shout out George Lopez.
He plays like the Beatle actor. The list is it's too many people. There's like
Emma Roberts is a youthful 33 years old, Owen.
No, but how old was she in the movie?
Oh, probably like
in her 20s.
33 minus 14, so 19.
Okay.
Whoa!
I didn't know when this movie came out.
And a high schooler in the movie.
Yeah, I was like, this movie felt like early, so I was like, oh.
Yeah.
She's like, was this like Emma Roberts? It's like 10 years old.
No, yeah. She's playing her subplot is that her and her boyfriend are trying to have sex for the first time. And that's just like the whole, they're high school virgins and they're like trying to plan this, like they're having sex. And then he goes to like surprise her at her house and he like gets naked in her bed. But then her mom comes home from work and finds him naked in her bed. Really, yeah, it's a dumb movie. It's like kind of like what we said about Crazy Stupid Love last week, even though I like that movie much more. Very watchable movie. If you're gonna watch a Valentine's Day movie, I wouldn't recommend Valentine's Day, but it's pretty easy to sit through. It's a pretty easy movie to watch. And then I watched a little double feature of Madam Web and Bob Marley One Love. Obviously, we're gonna talk about Madam Web. Bob Marley One Love, pretty disappointing. I felt
Yeah.
kind of bad because they had his son do the little, was it his son? I think it was his son. Somebody does the little intro thing at the beginning of the movie where they're like,
Yeah.
this is our vision and like this is how we wanted it to be and like we're really happy and we hope you guys enjoy. And I was like, damn, I kind of feel bad for Bob Marley, guys. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
I keep seeing things of like his children being very involved, but
yeah, it doesn't. I don't listen. If they're happy with it, I'm happy for them. That that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But like it becomes more and more apparent with all of these movies that if you're going to make a biopic and you're not going to have like an established good director making it, it's going to be really fucking boring.
Yeah,
like
no.
they're just not making good ones.
Well, it's
like unless it's like a big unless it's like a name who I care
yeah.
about making a biopic. Those are like like last year we had Napoleon obviously and like and Oppenheimer and like all the like biopics that are interesting because good people made them. No offense to this director, I don't even know his name, but
he
like,
did King Richard, right?
Yeah, which I didn't think was a bad movie actually. I quite liked King Richard. It's not like a great movie, but I'm not saying he's like incapable. I just think I'm much less interested in these movies if they're just not made by like
well,
there's just too many.
I didn't even
just like rinse and repeat kind of thing.
I knew immediately that I was not going to ever watch this movie. Just like true out of respect, because I didn't want to be disrespectful. Because like I'm so serious. Because a lot of people are like excited about it, and people like somebody told me the other day because they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see this. Like, what do you what's your take? What do you think?" And I'm like, "It looks really bad." And they're like, "Oh, well, it's like a super accurate depiction of Bob Marley's life." And I'm like, "That's not what movies are." Like,
it's just
well.
No, you can say what you're gonna say.
I think were you talking about like biopics and you need like a really good director to make these movies? Is biopics are like brands and like IPs, like the people that you're using, and the movies that are being made most of the time are treating them like that, and it's like it's just something else to sell. It's just a new thing to sell. And that's sadly the case for most of them. Is like, how can we sell this person's life as like content?
I don't know.
That's what people were annoyed about Maestro because they weren't doing that.
Because
you watch Bob Marley One Love. I saw somebody say this actually. I think I saw a tweet like this.
Yeah.
But like you really appreciate something like Maestro.
Perhaps we were too harsh on Maestro. Thanos
I was like maybe I need to up my Maestro rating a little bit because this is like there's a real difference here.
I think regardless of how good or you think that movie is, it's clear that Bradley Cooper is someone who's caring about both the craft and the person, not just the person to an extent. It feels like, I mean, I'm sure the director of the Bob, I'm not, I'm sure they care about Bob and his how it looks and stuff like that, but it feels, I don't know,
it's just like the problem is that when you make, I saw somebody comment on my review too that they need to like make more R-rated biopics. The problem is like it's how do you make a boring movie about Bob Marley? You know what I mean? Like that's the problem. Like when you have like some of these people, I'm just like if you manage to make a biopic about somebody like Bob Marley and it's boring, like you went wrong. That's the problem to me.
Last Days is a film about Gus Van Sant made, and I'm not saying this like it's a weird comparison, but the point I'm trying to make is that the movie's like about Kurt Cobain, but it's not a Kurt Cobain biopic. Like the character isn't named Kurt Cobain. It's kind of like a movie about a certain feeling, like an essence kind of thing. And I think it's kind of really hard to make a movie about a real person that existed so close, like so like recent in terms of like in trying to be like, oh, this is the real accurate portrayal, where I think like a better concept would be more to like capture a vibe. And I and I think like not to like a Terrence Malick style. It's a weird way to put this, but like more of like a poetic, like flowy kind of movie
Right.
that about Bob Marley would feel. And
I
it's
mean,
like I don't, but I don't like I don't. We don't need that necessarily. Like I don't
I don't want
like
to shove in my own,
same.
cinematic
Yeah.
Right.
biases, but like that's, I mean, Elvis does that really well, I think, or it's like
Yeah.
Sure.
Elvis, it like really captures like the vibe of Elvis, not
No, yeah, that's
necessarily
true.
about him as a guy. Like,
Yeah, well, that's
Absolutely.
true. It's like with the Elvis thing too. It's not being like. I think that's more into not necessarily like fiction, but it's like it's maybe a fictionalized version, but it's kind of this uh show. I don't know what the word would be for it, but it's like it's not being like this is the real Elvis, you know?
no, it's
Yeah.
not. It's
It's
very much like
But
they don't say that in the movie, but like when you're
mhm.
watching it, it's like, oh, this is like it's Baz Luhrmann is obviously he's invoking the myth of Elvis,
Yes, yes. Well, the
yeah.
which
same thing
is
with Napoleon. Napoleon's very much about like the myth of Napoleon rather than like this is exactly how everything happened and all that stuff.
exactly.
It's it's myth making and stuff. It's like these people are we talk about the names and the brands and like these big kind of cultural icons, and they're like these myths, and it's every biopic is like trying to be like this is exactly how
Yeah.
it happened when it's actually most of the time like 90% of the time even it's really not exactly like that's just not you're the when they're like oh this is how it happened when it it's not because you weren't I mean most of the people like you weren't there it's really
Yeah.
like this is how it
And with
happened based on like little information I have.
narrative cinema, most of the time is not really suited for like accurate retellings of events as
No,
much as
Yeah.
like documentary is,
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
like if
I mean,
there's a
people don't
really
want to make documentaries. That's
yeah,
like
Well
what it
because
boils down
documentaries don't
to.
make
Yeah,
millions of
exactly. Because
dollars.
nobody
yeah,
watches them. Yeah. But
uh
also, I think I don't want to, I don't want to completely bash on the Bob Marley movie or keep going at it at length or whatever. But
sure.
I think it's just also about. I think bringing up Elvis is a good point because I think if you're going to make a biopic today and you want it to be like something that I care about, you have to actually like say something worthwhile, And I think like one like with Elvis, for example, like we kind of know about Elvis and like there's been others like Elvis stuff, but like but the movie, like that Baz Luhrmann movie specifically, like spends a lot of time talking about how much Elvis owes to black artists, which is like not you know what I mean? Like that's an important conversation. Like that's something you really gain from the movie.
Right.
And with the Bob Marley movie, like they do this whole thing where like they kind of constantly repeat how much he like cares about the message and it's like about the message that he sends and blah 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 like all the stuff which like is true of Bob Marley, but like the movie doesn't really like tackle any of like the politics of the world like involving Bob Marley like at length or like really dive into them so that you don't really like get anything out of it. And I wish that were that like I was like if you're going to make a Bob Marley movie and this is a guy who historically had a lot to say,
Oh yeah.
maybe the movie should say a lot. I don't know, like that's just a little thing.
like
If you're really going to make biopics about these people, I think
it's like
we should really gain something from it.
in the Elvis movie, instead of all of like this, because the movie's kind of long, so instead of all of the scenes where Elvis is just like hanging around black musicians, which you could say whether or not you want to say about that, it is whatever. There are people who have negative feelings about that, but it's more like what if the Elvis movie, Elvis just said multiple times like, it's all about that BB King stuff. It's all about it's all about that
Yeah.
soul black people music.
Yeah.
It's like he just said
Yeah.
that in the movie instead.
I don't know.
Um,
Just like I don't know. I use that as an example, but yeah, I think that's like the difference between a lot of these movies. Anyway, let's move on to Madam Web because I don't want to drag this on for too long. And that was the other movie that was part of my double feature. Nice Madam Web Bob Marley double feature. Where do we start? Because as we know,
Well,
I think we start at the
This
beginning.
is the movie that Owen
I
chose for his birthday.
I think it'd
So
be interesting to start with
in
just kind of like
2002, Sam Raimi directed a film called
Okay.
Spider-Man that was
oh
Okay.
that
All
was produced
right.
by
mhm,
what's his name?
I'll
No,
be
it was not
around.
produced. It was co-directed by, or it was additional
Co-direct.
directing by a certain Kevin Feige.
Okay.
Right.
Um, and that movie was very successful and
Mhm.
spawned other superhero movies such as Ang Lee's Hulk,
True.
and eventually we get to Iron Man. And then Iron Man spawns
Monumental movie.
30 sequels.
Imagine making a movie and then there's like 30 sequels.
That's basically what the fucking MCU is.
Yeah.
No, I know, that's psychotic.
Like, it is psychotic. And among those sequels are Spider-Man movies, but notably the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies were made by Sony.
Yes.
And so Sony was loaning out Spider-Man to Marvel, who was owned by Disney, who created the Iron Man MCU movies, right? But Sony still has the rights to Spider-Man and all of Spider-Man's characters. So they decided, what if we make our own Spider-Man movies? And then Morbius happens, who is a Spider-Man villain.
Well, Venom first. We got Venom.
Oh, you're right. Correct. I'm sorry. Venom happens.
Venom with Tom Hardy.
With Tom Hardy, who is a Spider-Man villain turned anti-hero in this movie.
Venom did make
kind of cool idea. Kind of cool idea to make, because Venom is a big character. Like if Madam Web and Morbius are like D-list names. Like no one knew. Like no one besides like real comic book heads.
Well, also
the movies. Venom is like somebody due to Sam Raimi mainly. Venom is like a household name, not as big as Spider-Man, obviously, because Spider-Man is the biggest superhero ever.
But if Spider-Man's an S tier super like comic book character, Venom's like an A tier comic book character.
Like your mom knows who Venom is, you know. It's like
well, my mom does not, but
no, but like you see people wear Venom shirts and stuff.
Yeah, like
before the Tom Hardy movie.
Venom is like a legit character that's kind of existed for a while. Where Morbius and Madam Web were smaller, so that was a perfect kind of way to start. This kind of franchise, if there is any good way to start this sort of thing, with Tom Hardy.
Yeah,
Tom Hardy too, big get.
Yeah, but they do the Venom movie, which is it's the first in this series, I guess, that they've been doing, right? Which is they take, because they own all of the Spider-Man characters, so like Spider-Man and his entire like cast and rogue gallery, Sony owns, because back in the day when Marvel was selling the rights to all of their characters. Sony had the opportunity to buy the rights to every Marvel character, and they were like, no, we'll just buy Spider-Man, because who the fuck are all these other guys?
56 million too.
Yeah, big movie. Yeah.
That's huge.
So Sony bought all of the Spider-Man characters, and now they're like, what do? They take Spider-Man's biggest villain, Venom, turn him into an anti-hero. Which he already like was a little bit in the comic. I don't want to go into nerdy stuff.
It depends on what Venom.
Yeah. Turn him into an anti-hero. Make the Venom movie with Tom Hardy. Big success. Very popular. Then they take Morbius, like legitimately D tier, like comic book character.
D tier, but it's like a cool, like a vampire guy.
Right,
like
it's vampire.
Cool. Like
cool idea.
It could like making a movie about, again, like an anti-hero vampire thing. It's not the worst idea ever. Like, and especially like when you think of like, let's make like, because like, I'm not to like talk about like Guardians of the Galaxy or something, but like random ass characters can be brought into the public eye, and because it's like it's just a new character. It basically kind of exists as like, this doesn't exist as a comic book. It's just a new guy, and it's just a new movie about like a superhero kind of thing. So it's like it's not the worst idea.
No, not at all. And worse execution.
It is
very. The execution is that's where you make the big bucks.
I think it's very notable that like with all 3 and soon to be 4 of these Sony movies, right, that are removed, like different universe in the MCU, that are surrounded by Spider-Man, that are all Spider-Man characters, right? These are all villains. These are all Spider-Man's rogue galleries. These are all guys that in the comic books are trying to kill Spider-Man. These are bad guys. And Sony is, for all 4 of these movies, transforming them into anti-heroes or just straight up heroes in the case of Madam Web. Interesting. There's a lot of like comic book purists that are fucking annoying about this. Like when the Kraven the Hunter trailer came out, and they're like, Kraven the Hunter's, he doesn't hunt animals, he's hunting people. Because like Kraven the Hunter in the comic and all other Kraven the Hunter media in comic books and video games, he's a bad guy that kills animals. You know, and that's his whole thing. And it's like, guys, it's a movie. It's like you can change stuff. Like who cares?
I mean
it's a weird thing that these movies exist because it feels like the only reason that these movies exist is they're like, we have these things lying around, we might as well do something with them.
It's like a use it or lose it situation. It
Yeah,
kind of
it's
feels
like,
like.
I mean, we have this list of long ass random characters. Let's like roll a dice and like pick one, and then we'll make a movie about them. And I don't know if they really care if they're good.
I
Yeah.
don't think they. I'm going to be honest. I think that all of these movies that they're doing could lose money, except for Venom's not going to lose money. 'Cause Venom is like a surefire thing.
Did Venom 2 make money?
Yeah, it did. But I think Venom's a pretty surefire thing, and I think that as long as Venom's still making money,
Yeah, 500
all
million.
yeah, all of these movies could like do like be a net loss.
Yep.
Because Venom has an ace. Sorry, but Sony has an ace up their sleeve, which is called they own the rights to Spider-Man. They
Yeah.
could just make a Spider-Man movie literally whenever they want, and like
Well,
nobody
also,
can stop
I mean,
them.
they're making. I think they have the luxury of those animated movies that are making so much money, and
Right.
the profits from all those Tom Holland appearances,
Right.
where their net positive is looking pretty great.
Yeah.
In that aspect.
And it looks like, and many people have noted, maybe people were saying this the second that the Morbius movie was made, where they were like, oh, they're going to make a Sinister Six movie, which the Sinister Six is kind of like it's like
Yeah, it's like
the title for the team of Spider-Man's like rogue gallery of villains.
And what's his name is part of that, right? Jake Gyllenhaal's character in those Spider-Man movies.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
no, it's not. It's funny because it's like they're leaning more into like the D-list characters, but the like Sinister
Right.
Six would be more of like his
The-
6 like
like
most
the-
popular famous villains.
Right,
So it'd be
right.
like a little goofy version, but it was like it doesn't really matter. It's just like
But this
if they
is like
got- if they got
that's like a
6
movie
villains-
that could be happening, right?
Yeah, it's honestly after watching Madam Web, I was like, it kind of made me really confident. It's like, oh, they're gonna do a Sinister Six movie.
Yeah.
Well, so this is like a weird. How much do you know about like the script changes of this movie?
I don't know. I literally don't know anything about
The only
production of
thing
this
I
film.
heard about was the change of time, like
Okay.
where it went from being
Well,
a
so that
90s
was-
movie to now taking place in 2003.
I think one of the biggest issues with this movie is it's so clearly, obviously, like had to be changed a million times.
Yeah.
And it's obviously not the director's fault or the writer's fault or the actor's fault. And Dakota Johnson and the director, I was watching an interview and they talk about like doing like a million takes. And there was something about like, they said there was 2,300 edits or something, which like, I don't really know what they mean by like edits. In terms
Like
that's
cuts?
what
Or,
I'm saying.
like,
Like, well, they were like Mad Max Fury Road had 2,700 edits, and this had 2,000. Like, I was like, what do you mean by edits?
Yeah.
But
It's like
they were
that.
explaining that they just shot like a million takes, and it felt like they
That
shot
explains the
so many
performances.
takes, so they would have like all this information and all this like kind of stuff on hand so that when they had to change it, instead of doing reshoots, they did like ADR and like any way they could possibly make it, work
Movie.
in like the cheapest way possible.
I mean, yeah, reshoots are really expensive. You have to get
so
everybody
instead
back.
of doing
and,
reshoots,
Yeah.
so instead of doing reshoots on set, they shot like basically probably like 4 versions of this movie.
Yeah.
And there were rumors at many times. I don't know how true this is, but it makes a lot of sense to me, especially with the time changes and all this stuff. But at one point, there were one Spider-Man in this movie, and then at one point, there was a different Spider-Man in this movie, and then now there are no Spider-Man in this movie. And it makes a lot of sense when you have your main villain staring at the screen with his mouth moving and no dialogue coming out. Like it's like he could totally be like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill Spider-Man," and then you have to just
Yeah.
but you can't reshoot it, so you have to make him say something else and stuff like that. Like that stuff, it's bad, and it's more Sony's fault. But I don't think this is kind of my thesis here. that doesn't make this movie the worst movie of all time, like people are saying. But it is like I'm just interested on like why Sony is so in. I know Spider-Man's a cash cow, but I like why are they so like we have to get Spider-Man in this movie or like
well, my thing is like you say, Spider-Man's a cash cow. Spider-Man might be the biggest cash cow
no
in
yeah,
cinema.
sure,
Like,
sure.
um,
But it's interesting. Like I'm
like,
interested in like obviously I'll never really know the decisions behind this.
yeah.
But it's interesting to be like we're gonna have this Spider-Man. Oh, actually, let's try this Spider-Man, and then have no like I don't. Was it a legal thing or did they just be like, I don't like that actually. I'm actually not gonna use Spider-Man in this movie. It's
I'm
it's
gonna be so honest
bizarre.
right now. It's people are gonna say you guys might even hear what I'm about to say and call me dumb.
Yeah, sure.
Because people are so negative on this movie and are saying that it's like, oh, like this movie is like it's like fucking irredeemable garbage,
Yep,
you know?
yep.
People are so negative on it, but you're saying like, oh, I don't know the decisions behind it. I think that they went to the edit, and maybe if the rumors are true that they shot stuff with like like somebody
Yeah,
playing Peter Parker Spider-Man, right?
yeah.
I think that what happened was they might have gone to the edit and were like, "Oh, it's not working. The version of this movie with Spider-Man is bad. We're just gonna like take it out." I think it's
Sure.
probably what happened. And people
Yeah.
might hear that and be like, "Oh, well, that's definitely not what happened because the version of this movie is already bad and doesn't work." That's what I'm saying. I disagree. I think this version of the movie that
I
came out
could
works.
see that. I could see them being like, this movie is not good enough for Andrew Garfield to come back for it or something like,
Right, yeah.
like it's like maybe they're like, oh, this movie's fine. Like they're like, this movie's not the worst movie ever. It's fine. It's totally releasable. It's like, we released Morbius, so like they're not like this movie is like a total loss, but it's like, oh, this movie isn't as good as we hoped. We're not gonna bring Andrew Garfield into this. We're gonna save him for something ever. That makes sense. Yeah. But that's the thing, as I think this conversation and just like our talking about it is very I think is interesting, and I feel like I find myself defending this movie in my head a lot and like online and stuff, and just like the way I'm thinking about it, and it comes from like I think a place of like where this movie has a 1.7 on Letterboxd, and people online, everyone online is basically being like, this is the worst movie ever made. And when it's like, okay, the starting point is that. The starting point is this is the worst movie ever made. And to have more negative thoughts on it is like, you can't really go worse from that. So I think there are positives that people aren't like seeing that make it not the worst movie ever made. Still, I don't think it's good. Doug has more positive feelings.
I have some positives.
But I don't think it's like my biggest issue for the movie, like honestly, was like I was just not having too much fun.
Right.
And
yeah,
like,
I mean,
that was kind of one of my big problems.
For me, it's like fun isn't like obviously like entertainment and fun aren't the only things for movies, but when it's a superhero movie, like like I'm trying to have some fun. And I was actually like, oh, the cinematography is interesting, like that these choices are kind of interesting. I like these ideas, but that was kind of the most I was getting out of it rather than like I was having a good time. So if I don't know, if it was just a little more fun to me, I was all for it. Like there was nothing so egregious about this movie where I was like, I hate this, and I'm like really like mad. It was just I'm kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I'm probably in a similar space. Although I'm not gonna sit here and say I like the movie because I don't.
Sure,
but I think maybe my not problem, but maybe my like the reason why I didn't enjoy it all that much is because it definitely for me doesn't feel all that much like a superhero movie. It does a little bit, but like I'm saying for the crowd of people who enjoy superhero movies, this is not really like a movie for them. Like that's probably why they're hating on it so much.
I think that's why they don't like it.
Yes, but then on the reverse end, the other reasons why you can enjoy this movie, and a lot of people were kind of like, before I had seen it, a lot of people were saying like this movie is actually just really fun because it's like really funny and like you could have a good time with it, which like whatever. But I personally watching it, that is not the way that I felt, and that was not even the atmosphere in my theater. Like, it was, for me, there was not too many moments where I was like, oh, that's like a so bad it's good thing. Not that I want that, but like there were not too many moments where I was actually like laughing, and like where my theater was into it. Like there was a few a few moments that I thought were funny intentionally that I actually enjoyed. I was like, that was actually
That's what I
funny
was going to
for
get into
me.
that.
Yeah, we could talk about that. We could talk about that, but I'm just talking about like the appeal of the movie to me. Like generally, a lot of these like things that you would complain about that are also some of my own criticisms are not things where I was like, oh, this is silly. Like I'm enjoying that. I was like, that's just kind of like confusing and dumb to me. And I just like didn't really, I don't know, when I can't like enjoy either end of the spectrum, where I can't like enjoy it as like a regular, like, you know, dumb blockbuster superhero movie, or like as whatever else it can be. I was just like, yeah, I'm pretty much just not in any camp with this. I was like, I'm just kind of let down.
I think the most annoying part of this Madam Web discourse, right? Because that's whatever we whatever. I think the most annoying part of this is seeing so many people say this is the worst movie of all time. It's so much fun. I'll watch it 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that is so annoying to me, because here's my experience with Madam Web. I was watching it. I was literally prepared to like really, really have a bad time. Like I was like joking beforehand. I was like, oh, this movie's probably good.
Yeah.
Here I am now. But because I was really expecting it to be kind of like actually irredeemable trash.
Right.
And then I was sitting there and I was like, it's shot so well. It's shot so well. Actually, I was like stunned. I was like, wow, it's like there's like really provocative, like truly provocative images in this film. And then also I was laughing with the movie. There were jokes that were written in the screenplay and then performed by the actresses that I was like, I literally laughed at. Bro, Sydney Sweeney says that Martha Stewart joke when they're in the woods, and I like burst out laughed like super loudly in the middle of my theater, and I felt so embarrassed because it was like dead silent. You could drop a pin, and I was like, no, because that shit like caught me off guard, and I was like, that's like really funny.
For me, it was the scene. There's a couple of them. I think the one thing that I enjoyed most about this movie is that there are like a significant number of scenes that play to Dakota Johnson's strengths as like just being really funny. Like and just like the type of person that she is. You can see it in this movie. There's a scene at the baby shower where they're like playing this game where they have to guess baby names, which like I don't know if they actually play that at baby showers, but I feel like if they do, they give you hints or something. You know, I don't think they play a game
funny because she's like, what's my baby's
names.
name? And then there's like, and I fucking don't know. There's a million baby names. What do you want me to?
Then they ask her that whole thing about her mom. That part was really funny to me. I was like, she is
Dakota Johnson. The characterization that they give her character is very unique to a superhero lead. Like, I wouldn't go as far as say she's like unlikable, but like she's the vibe she brings to the room is like very like off-putting, which is very interesting. Like she's not like
it's intentional.
No, of course. But which I think is very interesting because like you're like that. I can't think of like a superhero character that's like very like that. I don't like that scene where she's in the thing. Even like, well, I think it plays to her like power set where like the scene in I think is like really like I don't know funny, but I think it's like a kind of good bit where they're asking the names, she like says a name or something, and then she like goes back or whatever, however it works, and then Emma Roberts, who plays the mom of Spider-Man, asks her like again, and then she's like, "What are we do? We do this already?" Like,
and it's like so awkward. It's so awkward.
Yeah. But it like that's how it's supposed to read, and like it works really well. And I think like the combination of her power set and her like very dry like thing going on, it like works really well. But I think I kind of wanted to go back to one little thing that Kevin said earlier, where this movie isn't structured. It has a third act superhero thingy, but
Yeah.
it's not really like narratively set up at all like a superhero movie. Like it
Okay.
has like it has its it has like its beats, right? She gets her powers.
Yeah.
There's a bad guy who has powers, and that guy wants to there are superhero elements to it,
Of
but
course.
it's I think, and I want to I'm gonna kind of use this to get into a point where I'm like, there are bits of this movie that
Yeah.
feel removed enough from the MCU formula that where it feels like refreshing. And this movie, even though I don't think it's a good movie, I do think there's enough of that is refreshing that we just don't see in some of the DC movies post Snyder, and all of the Marvel movies, because every superhero movie that comes out in the past 10 years is all trying to be like an MCU movie. And for whatever reason, the Sony movie that is like the Sony movies that are literally just like leeching off the fact that they own some random ass Spider-Man characters aren't like, oh, let's make a Marvel movie, because it's like the formula is out there. Like it's like exists. There's 30 of these movies. You could very easily like plot by plot like make a Marvel movie with your $80 million. But for some weird reason, these movies like kind of exist in a way where it's like from another universe almost, where like Marvel movies don't exist, where it feels like it came out in like 2005.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that a lot of people have been saying that this movie is very Elektra, very Deadpool, like Ben Affleck Deadpool. And not Deadpool, not what's his name? Daredevil. Sorry. Yeah, Daredevil. Ben Affleck Daredevil. And it's like, I haven't seen those movies since I was a little kid, so I can't really speak to the comparison, but I'm gonna say this movie invokes Ang Lee's Hulk to me a little bit. It's not as good as Ang Lee's Hulk, obviously. But I think that the way that Ang Lee's Hulk was actually interesting with the editing and the images that it shows, whereas obviously Ang Lee's Hulk is trying to invoke what it's like to read a comic book with its kind of like paneling editing. This doesn't do that, but
don't like that movie either. So.
Yeah, because people are dumb. That's what I'm getting at. People
no, but
freaking dumb.
I think the second time Ang Lee's Hulk just got brought up in this episode, but movie rips. But I do agree. I think it's interesting. I don't think that the MCU uses its power sets ever in like a visually interesting way. Where I do think like all of the stuff with her like whatever her power set's kind of confusing to me, but the way that it's used in these visual ways is like really interesting. And
That's
not even separate from that, like just like the paramedic stuff is shot like interestingly.
That's what I was going to say. There's two sequences in this, and I think they both happen in the first half of the movie, where I was really like stunned, and I was getting a little angry in my head, where I was like, I cannot believe everybody I know gave this a half star. I was like, what the fuck? So the first time she gets her powers, when she dies, basically, when she falls off the bridge, hits the water, whatever, and we get these insane images.
Did you not see that online before?
No, I didn't see anything online before.
I don't know if it was in the trailer, but I remember seeing that bit where she's in the water and you have these like webs, and the giant S was a big thing on Twitter, where it's like it's from the Pepsi sign in the third act. But everyone was like, what the fuck's this giant S doing? But there's like it's a really like interesting kind of visual.
She gets caught in like the web of time, and it's like an interesting way to communicate that. And then it like cuts to her, and then like when she's in the water, we get the POV shot of her looking at blood on her hands. That is some Nick Refn Only God Forgives ass imagery, dude. That is like real provocative ass imagery to put in your goddamn comic book movie. You know what I mean? And then like that, so that stuff, I was like, hold on now. And then I think it takes it a step further when we get after the baby shower, right? we have her with some other paramedics, and one of her colleagues dies, gets T-boned by a big fucking garbage truck or whatever. And it's like that whole sequence is edited insane, like truly edited. It's like borderline experimental with the editing. And I'm not saying that as an insult. People were saying that shit as like a negative about this, where it's like, oh, it's borderline experimental with the way how bad. And I'm like, no, it's literally that sequence is borderline experimental with the imagery. It is like insane montage cutting between different takes, like super fast. You see like images on top of images and like insane match cuts, and you see like her looking down at the sky that's like hurt or whatever, and like it flashes into her coworker in the uniform, and then her like POV shot, her looking at her coworker in uniform, her with blood on her hands, looking at blood on her hands, then it immediately cuts away from that, and it's like, oh my god, the way that it's like and I keep saying invoking, the way that it's like communicating her powers, and like the way that she's experiencing her powers, and how overwhelming this is, and how, oh, I can't control this.
Yeah,
it's giving Sam Raimi Spider-Man. It's giving real fucking filmmaking, and I feel crazy right now for saying that, because am I crazy or is like those sequences are good?
No,
can you guys argue with me, or like?
I mean, I'm not gonna. The problem is that I'm not gonna push back on that because I don't disagree with it. I'm just gonna push back on everything else that I don't like about the movie. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna like sit here and be like the images are bad, because they're not.
Well, I think
everything else is, in my opinion.
The last time a quote unquote Marvel movie had anything remotely like this was Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And the reason for this is because Sam Raimi directed that movie as much as he could. And I was constantly thinking about this after I watched Madame Web, and while I was watching Madame Web, and I feel like it is very clear that there's a difference in the levels of control between these two studios. And I think it's never been more clear when you have the same cinematographer working on these two movies, because I forget the guy's name. He shot Avatar, big movie. You ever heard of it?
Mauro Fiore, I think is how you made it.
So Mauro shot No Way Home and Madame Web.
Yes.
In like very close time. So the guy didn't automatically learn how to shoot a movie. He's known how to shoot a movie for forever, right? And it's very clear that he was allowed to do more cool shit and be more creative on Madame Web, as where he just kind of showed up and was told what to do on No Way Home. And I don't think that he was like a big Madame Web fan or anything. I don't think like it was his dream project, but it's a simple like, hey, I'm gonna let you do what your like career is. I'm gonna let you like make a movie, and rather than like the hyper control that Kevin Feige brings. So my kind of takeaway, my biggest takeaway from Madame Web is straight up, if they got better writers, that's like the biggest issue. But if they got better writers, keep getting good cinematographers, and I'm not like hating on this director, because a lot of this issues is not her fault.
Well, that's what I kind of have a theory that revolves around the cinematographer of this too, where it requires a little bit of explanation, but in conventional wisdom, right, is in TV shows, what happens a lot is like they'll have one cinematographer for a whole season of a TV show, and you'll have different directors. So you'll have like a showrunner, and then some like individual writers for each show that are like for each episode that are controlled by the showrunner, and then you'll have different directors kind of like do different batches of episodes throughout a season, right? Also kind of like controlled by a showrunner, but the showrunner's not there all the time. So what they'll do is that they'll bring on a cinematographer that will be there for the whole season, that is appointed by the showrunner. And the cinematographer's job on a season of TV, and this might not be the case anymore, but this was the case for like network TV for a long time. Was like the cinematographer's job was to keep the director in line, was to like make sure the director, because the cinematographer, he's in charge of the camera crew, right? So it was like the cinematographer's job was to make sure the director didn't fuck up, and so adhere to the showrunner's vision over the director's vision while shooting the film. I feel like on this, Sony might have brought on the cinematographer, and like I feel like he might have had more control on set than the director even. I don't know how
Maybe.
if they did like thousands of takes for all these different shots and stuff, that might not be the case. It might just be this was a really terrible environment, but it's shot so well, and I don't know.
That's what, for me, listening even that short clip of the director talking about the movie, it felt like she had like a lot of control of like it, but also I don't know if that was entirely, because I mentioned earlier I think it was kind of a lot because they wanted a lot of information, so like in case they didn't have to do many reshoots, but also it kind of almost, it did feel like this director wasn't as confident. It depends on the director, but most people aren't doing
veteran
a million
cinematographer
takes.
paired with like a really new director.
Yeah, I mean that's a good pairing. But I guess to go back to my thesis thingy, I think that it is more possible. I think you have a higher chance of making a good movie under this weird ass Sony shit than you do in the Disney Marvel slop. But good movie, quote unquote. But I think like if you are trying to achieve a vision, I don't think it is I just like 100% don't think it is possible to do that under whatever Disney is doing right now. And the fact that like the Morbius studio, you can do that, I think is like very bizarre. But I do think like it is possible. And I think if Sony just backed off like a hair about the whole Spider-Man shit, like they could make some really cool stuff. I don't know if the world wants that or would even care, but I do think like they could make actually like movies that are like worth a damn in that studio with these random ass characters. I think they could pull out D-list. Like I think that Craven movie, I was never like, you're not gonna find my ass excited for that Craven movie, but watching this Madam Web movie, I was like, that movie might be solid. Like that cast is cool. Like I looked at it, the cinematographer isn't as good. Like so, like I don't know if it's gonna be shot anywhere near as well. But I think the writers are different. This writer group was writers on Morbius and Madam Web. Like it was, I think they probably signed like a multi-picture deal or something, so they got stuck with them or something. Because it would be like if Morbius was received that well, it's like, oh, let's bring them back. They probably like, oh, you're gonna write this one and this one, and they had like 3 writers maybe. But I think there are different writers for that movie. So while I didn't love Madam Web, there was enough for me in this movie where I was like, Sony, it might not be the next one. It might not be the next one, but I think they can make a movie. Whereas the MCU for the past 2 decades or whatever bullshit, like I don't think they're ever gonna make a movie that I really like. But I think Sony has shown in Madam fucking Web that there is a possibility because they let a guy shoot on location and do weird shit. Like, even though there is like, I think the biggest issue of this movie is there is a little too much studio interference, but it is nowhere near as bad as the shit that's going on in Disney. And
to really hammer that home, dude, it's like while watching this shit, those Disney Star Wars fucking TV shows, they handed the keys to Dave fucking Filoni.
Dave Filoni.
And I've been very vocal. Listen, Dave Filoni's probably a really nice guy. He was literally friends with George Lucas, right? He's probably chill. I think that Dave Filoni has no idea how to make something look desirable. And I watched parts of that Ahsoka show. Madam Web is so much better than that Ahsoka show, even regardless of all of the fucking writing stuff in Madam Web or whatever. That performances are weird in Madam Web, including all of that stuff. It's just a way better product than that Ahsoka show, and so many people love that Ahsoka show. So I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And honestly, I have a theory. I think that if the ADR stuff, which didn't really bother me because ADR is just a part of making movies, and yeah, they didn't hide it well in this, but and maybe you could be like, oh, as also his line reading was annoying, whatever.
Yeah.
ADR stuff in this, I think that if you just take out like or like if they hit it really well, or maybe just like didn't do it or whatever, some of the ADR in this, I think people would just like this movie. Straight up. Straight up.
Maybe
That's
not
the
like
only
it, but I
advantage.
do agree. I do agree that if the ADR issues weren't in this movie, that people would like it more. Because the ADR issue is such a glaringly obvious issue that anyone can fucking point out.
Yeah,
Where
that's what I was just about to say.
most people don't go into movies and fucking see an issue, right?
Yeah.
Because most
Yeah.
people don't know what movies are, how they don't know what movies are. They don't know how movies work or what's a good movie, what's a bad movie.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
people just watch a movie and like, okay, that was fun, like whatever. But when you go to the movies and it's like an $80 million movie and it's like the big new superhero movie, and you see a guy's mouth moving and the words aren't matching up, everyone's gonna know that's fucking wrong. And then they're gonna be like,
It's
wait, I've never seen this. Because
Yeah.
you know they don't watch whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's like
it's
but
well,
if
it's
you
because
go to the movies, like I've never seen something this like
yeah.
obviously wrong. They're like, this is the worst movie I've ever fucking seen. Where it's like that the ADR issues aren't that like that movie that does not like make or break the movie for me. But it's
Yeah.
such like an obvious thing that anyone can see is like that's not how it's supposed to be. That it's ultimately like, wait, this is really bad.
Yeah, that's what I
Other
was gonna
issues, but
yeah,
for sure the
yeah.
bad's
I think that's the most obvious thing that somebody who doesn't know anything about filmmaking can point to and be like, "Hey, that's not supposed to happen.
yeah,
This is a
yeah,
bad
yeah.
movie." And I swear to God, I think of that, of like specifically the ADRs, not even the ADR stuff for the main cast, I think is so like done well enough. People might disagree with me. I think it's done totally fine, well enough. But with the fucking villain with Tahar
Yeah.
Rahim, right? His ADR stuff,
It's
I think
bad.
that if like that was not noticeable, people like Soups would not have made his video where he's like, it's the worst movie of all time. I think people like I don't want to call out our friends, but I think that like
call
actual
out
no no
all
no
of
no
our
no.
friends. Call
But
every friend that
I think
gave it
that
up
all
because
these
everyone gave it
people
a star.
that like really are like this is like irredeemable garbage,
Sure.
The Room, like stuff like that. I think that
Shout out
they
Cinnamon
wouldn't be
Show.
saying that if just like the ADR for right Tahar Rahim wasn't
Mhm.
as noticeable because everything else is like so passable to me, if not good. Where I'm like, I don't know, because you guys talk about the writing too. The movie makes sense. The movie makes sense. There's so many movies that don't even make sense. This movie is like
Well,
written.
Kevin, you
I
want
don't
to talk about
think
the you want to talk
I
about
don't
the
think I don't think the
brew?
movie makes sense. I need and the only reason why I'm not going to be annoying about it, but
No, be
I feel
annoying
like
about it. Whole
No,
podcast.
no. I'm
Kevin,
saying because I
talk.
feel like there has to be like a little bit of pushback because
Yeah,
you know,
pushback,
I
pushback,
still
pushback.
gave the movie 1 star. You know, like
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Talk
I don't know.
about how it's garbage.
Okay, here's the thing. I just want to circle back for a second because we just talked about a lot. I agree that if there's something bad in the movie that's easy to point to, people are going to shit on it more. And I think that people even go out of their way to do that with good movies. I've noticed recently on my TikTok where I was talking about the Best Picture nominees, I put Oppenheimer at number 1, and like for some reason my comments are flooded with people who hate Oppenheimer, and like every single comment is talking about like, I thought Oppenheimer was okay, but the pacing is so bad and it's so boring. And I'm like, people just say that when a movie is 3 hours long and they don't have the attention to watch a 3-hour movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you don't really
Oppenheimer
like
is
those
so
people don't really know.
fast-paced.
Yeah, I know. That's what I
Pacing
was gonna
is
say. I was gonna say that too. That's like the
ultimate-
easiest thing to point to if you don't know anything about movies because it's just it's just how you feel watching something. Like it's like if you just get bored watching something, you're like, well, the pacing sucks. But
That's so dumb.
so that's like a thing where I'm
Sure.
like, people can just pick something, and they're doing that with the ADR in this movie. Like they found a thing, and they're like, that is very obviously a problem.
When's the last time we've talked about ADR on a fucking movie?
Nobody, yeah,
like,
nobody gives
obviously, yes, the ADR in this movie is bad, but like
there's ADR in every fucking
there's
blockbuster.
ADR in every fucking movie. Like ADR is a normal fucking thing, and yes, they had issues because they fucking changed the script or whatever a million times, or whatever.
Yeah,
so
they had to get the character to say different words.
This guy had to say different words, and they didn't have money. They weren't going to spend money to reshoot it, so there's problems with it. But these, you know, it's like ADR, ADR sort of thing where it's like you don't. It's I don't even know what another example would be, but it's like you're not the only if you talk about it, it's a bad thing. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, you're
Well,
not gonna
it's like,
talk about it
bro,
when it's like, oh, look at that, it's good ADR, because you're not supposed to notice it.
yeah, it's
And
the good and the bad and the ugly, right? All those fucking spaghetti western. Granted, Sergio Leone.
Right,
I'm gonna say it.
yeah,
Way better filmmaker than
Yeah, yeah.
anybody
Yeah,
involved in
yeah,
Madame Web.
yeah,
Those
yeah,
are
yeah,
one of
yeah.
the greatest movies, some of the greatest movies of all time. Were those
Of course.
Sergio Leone westerns? But those spaghetti westerns, right? They didn't. Granted, this technology was available. This isn't like an old movie thing.
Yeah.
They just, in those fucking Italian movies, they did not have microphones on set. They did not have microphones on set. Everybody spoke different languages while they were shooting, and then they had different actors come in way later during post production and just like talk over all of the characters because
Yeah.
they didn't have fucking microphones on the set.
Well,
And
that's how every giallo is.
yeah, it's
and
like,
Right,
it's like,
yeah, they're all,
and that's
yeah.
that's the big thing, is I think that's kind of the point of reference of like, the bad ADR doesn't ruin the movie, because
yeah,
like any
doesn't help
giallo
that the
ever
guy
with ADR like that
line
is
reading isn't
like, the
great.
movie
Yeah.
doesn't. Yeah, there's
Um,
other issues that make it not
Yeah.
great.
So I think, okay, you said it's a movie that makes sense, which I don't know if I need to push back on
Push
that
back, push back,
specifically.
push back.
No, because I don't know that the movie. No, actually, I think the movie doesn't make sense. Only because, listen, Owen mentioned already that they, whatever the fuck that means, they edited it 2,300 times or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
whatever that fucking means.
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's
Like,
clearly
2,300 edits. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what that means,
2,300 cuts. Like,
yeah, I don't know what that means, but I know that I can see that in the final product, because the sequence of events and the way that things happen in this movie makes very little sense to me. I think there are things, I mean, I pointed it out in my review, and this is like a nitpick, but it is like, to me at least, like such an obvious, like, that just is strange to me, where like there's the scene where she literally is like, I have to go to Peru because I need to find answers, and she is a wanted like fugitive, like she is like, her face is like plastered everywhere, and like the cops are looking for her, and she's like, I have to go to Peru, and she hops in a taxi, and then we cut to her in the Peruvian rainforest, and I'm just like, there's
Kevin,
a
she
lot
went
has
to
to happen.
JFK. It's an international airport. It's like,
yeah, sure. Like, she's a wanted criminal. They don't like you don't just go to JFK and fly to Peru when you're a wanted criminal. Like,
I
people
think
don't
it's
do that.
interesting that they changed the era of this movie, because
Right.
if
Because
it's
it happens right after
if it's
9/11.
Pre 9/11, it makes a little more
do
sense
not-
that she
You
was
do
able.
not go to the airport 2 years
it's
after 9/11.
2003.
After you don't kidnap 3 girls, go to the airport 2 years after 9/11, and then fly to Peru without any issues and not even show it to us.
But I do think,
And
like,
listen, I get that was probably cut. Like,
Yeah,
there's probably, the movie's
sure.
2 hours long. There's stuff that gets cut out. The movie clearly jumps between a bunch of things, and they chose to fucking cut her going to Peru. I'm just saying, from a story perspective, that is a really confusing detail. Like, I'm not saying it's confusing, because I know I can imagine what happened. I can imagine that she did her stupid fucking, like, you know, seeing the future and like figuring things out at the airport and like figuring out how to bypass security or whatever.
Cool, like
it happened.
It might have cost too much, but that would have been
Yeah.
a really cool like set piece if she was like at the airport and she like sneaked through security using her
Right.
that would have been so cool.
Yes.
Like, I don't know.
I'm saying
That exists.
I'm smart enough to
Deleted
figure out
scenes.
how she I'm smart enough to figure out how she could
Yeah,
have
yeah,
done one thing and gotten to another place. So in that sense, it is not confusing. I think it is confusing from like a decisions perspective, like how the beats of a story are supposed to go. And I think that like, in addition, the way that those beats play out and the way that conflict happens in this movie is so like not appealing to me. I'm not saying that it doesn't, like, that it can't work. I don't love the idea of like they are just on the run the entire, like, it's not really a superhero versus villain movie as much as it is like a person who just got their powers and has to like constantly take people from one place to the next place because somebody is trying to kill them movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
which
an
is like
origin story.
sure, and I'm
Um,
like I'm aware
yeah,
of
yeah.
that. I just think like from a conflict perspective, it's very like boring to me because I
Mhm.
don't want to watch that thing happen, and I don't want to like have her. I mean, there's like she hits a guy with a car twice, like that, like
She rides around in a stolen taxi the entire movie.
right, like she
Kinda
like
cool.
they go to one place, that they're at a diner, she sees the future, she's like, I'm gonna hit this guy with my car so that we can leave, and then they go to another place because they ran away again, because their whole
Yeah.
movie they're running away, and then she's like, guess what, I have a bigger fucking car this time and I'm gonna hit him with it again. like the movie is just
Well,
like people going from one place to the next, and that is the conflict, and it's like how long can they run, and then eventually they don't have to run anymore because you know what I mean, but like it just doesn't, like, from a story beats perspective and the way that the story is laid out to you, that's what I mean when I say it makes no sense to me. Like, I'm not saying it's
Sure.
confusing to follow and understand what is happening, but it is confusing to follow in the sense that this is not a script that works for me in any way whatsoever. But I do agree with what Owen said previously, which is that if you take this exact cast, maybe even this exact director, and you write a movie that makes sense with these characters, I might enjoy it, because
I honestly, I
think it's
just think this.
possible.
I think there probably was a version of this script that was better, or
Yeah.
if you're, because taking this movie as like at face value and being like, this is how they wrote it, and this is how they shot it, and this is how they plan to edit, like that is, I know that it's not what happened, right? But taking
Yeah.
this as like, this is the script, and this is the only script that has ever existed, I honestly think you need a few rewrites, and then we're golden. I
Yeah.
think it's close. It you brought up the fact that like she keeps hitting him with his car.
Yeah.
I really am interested in her power set. And I think the fact that she doesn't have powers and she's utilized, like, I think there probably would have been like
I think it's
couple,
interesting.
a couple other creative ways they could have used it. But I think like the fireworks and stuff like that, and the fact
Was
that
really cool.
she's like bringing him to like the spot where like the things fall on him. Like, I just think there's interesting ways that like, and I feel like this happened in the Marvel stuff where like it kind of started to feel like everyone had the same powers. Like
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
kind of felt like just duplicates of each other. And I think that this power set is like an interesting thing where like, one, you're showing things like in a visual medium, like you're using the medium to like play with the power set, and also it's like a narrative storytelling device. It's not a movie that I love, but I saw a lot of people talk about Edge of Tomorrow and the fact of like
Right.
resetting and like
Yes.
the
Yes.
sort of
yes,
like
yes.
Groundhog Day kind of thing, and it's just like a narrative device in her power set that's really
Yeah.
interesting. And again, yeah, I don't think, like Kevin said, I don't think the script is that great, but I do think there are elements of the script that I really like that whole thing.
Yeah. I think there's a good story buried in this
yeah,
movie
and I
that
think,
would require you to make an entirely new story.
and I think, but I do
I
think
think you would have to make a whole new movie.
and to
for it to
remove the
work.
face value element, and I talked about it earlier, I do think a lot of this was kind of mangled again in the whole like, will they, won't they, with the Spider-Man situation.
Right.
We really
But
didn't. Yeah. What was you gonna say?
I just the only other thing I want to like kind of push back on,
Sure,
just
keep right
because I
there.
don't want people listening to, and maybe you guys disagree, but the thing is like, we keep repeating that there's like clear studio interference and that it's kind of not the fault of the actors or the cinematographer or whoever. Like, that to me does not exempt it in the sense that like I should be like, I want to be upset that the studio interfered, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
reason why I don't like the movie. Does that make sense? Because I feel like we keep like making excuses in the sense that like the studio interfered and this could have been a better movie if they didn't, but they
So
did.
the thing
So
with me
like I
is like,
want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's that I want to make that clear that like I'm upset that they did, and that's why like the movie is bad.
But for me, when we say that, right, I'm like, that's what's stopping Madam Web from maybe being a great movie.
Sure,
You
because
know,
you like it, yeah, which is
Straight
fine.
up,
yeah,
straight up,
like
if they released a fucking director's cut of Madam Web, like rating could go like hella up. But I don't know if like there was a really great version of this, but I do think it's yes, the studio interference is a lot of the reasons why this is lower for me. But I do think that, like I said earlier, there is less studio interference here
Sure,
than
yeah.
the Marvel stuff. So it's just a comparison thing, when,
But the
especially when we're
problem,
talking about
I
like.
think the
But
problem is that with the
I do think,
Marvel,
yeah, sure.
with
What?
the Marvel stuff, like you're talking about studio interference in the sense that like the MCU has a particular way in which they make movies. Like they have a particular system about how they like push out this slop and it's like repeated over and over again.
yeah,
But like the studio interference here is like what we see in the final product, which is just like, you know, it's cut to pieces and the script doesn't make, and like blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like it's to me, I'm not saying it's as bad as the MCU because I think that's like a
Yeah.
problem that they can't fix, but I do think it's as bad in how it like and like what we get out of it. Like it's still like it's bad in a different way, but it's still bad.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think it's tough because it's like I'm comparing things that I both think are bad. I don't know if
Yeah,
that
it's
makes
like
sense.
comparing garbage to trash.
I don't know. I listen. I pretty radical perspective on this film. I don't know. It
Right,
worked.
right.
It was like I was sitting
No,
there
but
and it's just like
I
some of
think
my
it's just good.
sentimentalities it clicked with, and obviously like there's bad things about it. I'm not going to sit here and talk about Madam Web it should be talked about in the same vein as Spider-Man 2. I'm not dumb, right? I'm not an
Right.
idiot, let alone how like listen, you know, it's like but I think that some of the stuff, like really good images in it. I think that some of the narrative beats I don't think I'm not saying that they're great, but they work for me, and I'm engaged and I'm following. And then the performances is another thing that people talk about, where it's like, oh, every line reading's terrible. In the context of the full film, it's pretty easy for me to click in and be like, oh, this is just how the characters talk in this. This is just how it is in this universe, and it didn't really bother me. I wasn't just like, oh, this is bad acting. And I was honestly, after the film, I was thinking about it, and I think that a lot of people view cinema through a lens of like the binary good and bad. And I was thinking about this like
Sure.
specifically with the performances, where it's like, oh, a performance in a film is either good or it's bad, and it's like a flip that you switch on and off. And I think that like there's a lot of gray area in that, and I think all of these performances except for the villain land in a gray area for me, where it's like
Okay.
Sydney Sweeney in this, it is a truly transformative performance because she does not play Sydney Sweeney at all in this in a very interesting way. And Dakota Johnson in this is like, you know, it's like playing to her strengths, like we said. And it's I don't know. I don't know.
Listen, I get the gray area part because I do think it's a gray area, but for me, it's like a gray area in the sense that like I don't think that the actors are at fault for the fact that the words that they have to say suck. Like that's just how
Yeah,
I
sure,
feel. Like
sure, sure, sure.
I'm like the
I
script sucks, and it's like not their problem that they're working with a script that sucks. Like it's you don't. There's nobody you put into this movie where I'm like, yeah, they did a good job because they can't.
I think it's funny. They're like, we did so many takes of this movie, and there's like, here's the best takes we got, and it's like, okay, but again, I don't think the acting is like the worst ever.
No,
I
neither
think
do I.
Dakota Johnson's interesting in it. I think Adam Scott's really
Good.
good.
Adam Scott's good. Yeah, straight up.
Which we didn't talk about him that much.
Like he's like, but he's just like a likable guy.
But that's what I'm saying. But I think like but I think again, it's weird that he plays. We didn't talk about this yet. It's weird that he plays young Uncle Ben.
Yeah, I'm like, that's stupid to me.
Which,
like, I'm like, that's another part of the script where I'm like, this is fucking dumb.
So
like,
to me, there's two things that make sense to me, and will not make sense to me. There's two ways that this is in the movie, right? It's either just stupid shoehorning him in to be like, hey guys, Uncle Ben's in this movie. Or there was a bigger fucking shit going on in the original version of the script. They cast Adam Scott and then they changed the movie, because for me, it very feels like there was a point in this movie, there was a point in the script and in the shooting maybe where Emma Roberts had a bigger role, Adam Scott had a bigger role, and instead of the Vision being like, hey, I'm seeing these Spider Women kill me, I think he sees Spider-Man and then he's trying to kill the baby Spider-Man. Like he's trying to
a totally different movie.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think the
Yeah,
reason Uncle Ben is in this movie and the mom with the baby Peter Parker is that he would be going after that baby, and then like I don't know how, that's like,
Is it not?
but
Is it
I
not
feel like
possible though that if they are trying to, if they're like keeping in their back pocket that they can make a Spider-Man movie, like a newer Sony Spider-Man movie, and this movie, at least at the end of it, makes it feel a whole lot like it is a prequel to something else. Is it not possible that they are just putting these characters in there because it would be connected to another Spider-Man movie in the future
that makes
where like
Absolutely.
this
sense.
kid grows up? You know what I mean? Like
I think
that's like logically to
that
me.
makes sense to me too.
So
Yeah,
with
that makes
the
sense to
rumor
me
that
too.
they shot scenes with a Peter Parker Spider-Man character, right? I think that what made me think is how it was probably used in the film was that I feel like Dakota Johnson's Madame Web,
Right.
had a vision of Spider-Man, and I was of some like seeing like the baby's future, right? As Spider-Man.
I think we lost Doug.
No, whenever I didn't know what happened in
No.
Madam Web and Doug's version. Madam Web, Doug's version.
Okay.
All right, try to
For
explain.
the
Go
listener,
all the way back. Go all the way
yeah.
back.
For the listener experience, Doug is experiencing some technical difficulties, so we're trying to hear his entire thoughts on his Madam Web theory. Continue.
I was
From the
just
beginning.
saying that if there was a version of this film, right, that included Spider-Man, maybe the thing that makes the most sense to me would be that Madam Web sees a vision of Emma Roberts' baby in the future as Spider-Man, as another Spider person, right, that is fighting her because Madam Web is like a a Spider-Man villain. And I don't know why they would remove that. Again, it might not have just worked in the edit, but that makes a lot of sense to me as something that would logically you would want to include.
Yeah. No, what are you gonna say, Owen?
Well, I just think I personally I'm not familiar. I know Madam Web is a villain and like she's an old lady and all that stuff. That's like the extent of my Madam Web knowledge. I think it's interesting for them. It makes sense for like we're gonna sell a superhero movie to make her like sort of a hero in this movie, but I do think it's like it's I don't know. I think it would be interesting to be like she's good here and now she's like evil. But I don't know. It's a interesting, like her character's kind of interesting to me because obviously like, when you're casting a young person as this like person who's old and setting it in like 2003, it feels like there's like they're wanting to build something. I doubt this movie gets a sequel because it's called the worst movie ever made, and those movies don't get sequels unless they're on Netflix.
So the thing about the movie,
but I feel like it is trying to set up a lot.
Yeah, so my theory in terms of the movie getting a sequel, which I don't think it is, but
let's
like
just do Madam Web theories for
what I
minutes.
think. But what I think is like the most logical explanation is that the movie jumped from the 90s or whatever it was set to 2003 and sets up the Peter Parker baby at the end of it so that when he grows up, it could be in line with a present day Peter Parker if they were going to make new Spider-Man movies. And from their perspective, it makes sense marketing wise because, like you said, Madam Web is a character who people don't really know and is like a D tier or whatever like character. And so by connecting it to like a Spider-Man, that movie that they can make, it makes the movie like it makes sense for them to make the movie. Like that's what I think is the most logical like reason for.
Well, that's what it, to me, the rumors and the way that it made sense in my head, like it felt like it was in the 90s because they were like, oh, Andrew Garfield is how the timeline makes sense, right? And then they moved it up to the Tom Holland / new guy era. And it feels weird because they moved it around so much and then never ended up paying it off. Or will they? Like,
well, that's the thing. Like by putting the baby in there, like we don't know when it's going to be connected.
Like
because like
it's a weird. There's a lot of weird stuff in the movie because it's like set up for payoff that feels like was in the movie at one point and now pushed to a possible other movie that we're not gonna get.
Right. Final Madam Web theory question for you guys. Not theory. This actually isn't a theory.
No, theory. They drop theories on this.
Is Madam Web a 9/11 movie?
Yeah.
New York City, first responder, traumatic,
which I think it makes
losing
sense
a family member.
that it's set in 2003. In the text of the film, it makes sense. Which I think it's funny that was original. I don't know if they changed things because like it makes. I think a lot of this probably was stuck in the script at the beginning, so it makes sense they jumped from the 90s to the 2000s, early 2000s.
Right.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of. I think anytime you're making a movie in New York where like shit is going wrong,
it's an
post 9/11, you have to take 9/11 in account. I do think obviously when you're thinking about that stuff, obviously when the Peru stuff happens, like it's like, oh, probably should have thought about that a little more. But I do think, I do think,
strange. Outsider who's not from America.
But that is a big thing that again we talked about. This movie will always exist in the kind of next door neighborhood of the Marvel MCU shit, and this movie feels like it was shot in like Boston or like a bunch of places, but I know it was shot in Boston. But this movie feels like not New York technically, but like it feels like it was shot in a real fucking city. Like it exists. Like these characters exist in cities. There's a scene where
not on the volume. Yeah.
There's a scene where fucking Dakota Johnson is like, "Can I climb walls?" And she like slides down
that was pretty funny, actually.
But it's like it feels like those like earlier superhero movies, like they exist in the real world, even the new origin story movies that they be making don't like they're not tangible. They don't feel like that guy exists in like the next city over. This movie, I think the best compliment I can give it is that it's shot really well and it feels like it exists in like the earth, and like it's fucking like I don't know, like the fact that they actually shot, like I'm sure they shoot on location here and there for the fucking MCU movies, but there's a good this is really shot on location.
Oh, I was just gonna say like they do not shoot on location for any of the new MCU movies at all. Like 100%.
I knew most of it. No, I wasn't sure like the percentage, which I think is that's like. I don't know, like what the fuck. I think it's funny. Dakota Johnson. I think this movie is so fun to talk about. I'm sorry. I'm gonna drag this on forever.
Yeah.
Dakota Johnson. I think it was funny in her interview. She was like, the blue screen shit. I hate it, and it was funny. She was talking about like her experience, and obviously like there's parts of this movie that had to be shot on like a blue screen, whatever. But I think it's funny, like how she's talking about like how she thinks it's psychotic to shoot on blue screen, like how she hates it as an actor. And there's so much of this movie compared to the MCU stuff that is shot on location. Now, like more like I don't know. It's just funny for her like to talk about it like that and be like, I can't imagine doing that.
Doing a whole movie
and she's like talking about like I'm sure it's a higher percentage than I think. But the point blank end of the line. They went out and shot this movie, and it felt like the actors were on the same set that in the same day, and they were shooting together, and it was on a real fucking dirt. They were on the earth together at the same time, and the camera was a couple feet away, and so
Are
as
you gonna start talking
I,
about like AI movies now? Are you we're gonna like this is
no,
spiraling into
No,
like a
no,
real
well,
political
no, because that would
like
take way too much time, especially with
I
like
think
the events of the past couple days.
many people are calling Madam Web the worst movie ever made, and I think that this movie is closer to a quote unquote real fucking movie than like any of the new MCU
Okay, so
movies or any of
I was
the
just about to
MCU
ask if you can do
characters.
this, Owen, but I don't know
No.
that your memory is strong enough. I can't do it with Doug because he rated Madam Web quite high, so it's a little bit different. But I was gonna ask if I could throw out MCU movies and you could tell me if you'd pick Madam Web or the MCU movie.
Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do
Okay.
it.
Okay, we'll start with like some like maybe universally bad ones. Thor: The Dark World. You're taking Madam Web.
I haven't seen this movie since it came out. I'm gonna take Madam Web just because of that. But I'm actually interested in those early Thor movies, especially the ones Kenny B directed. Not
Right.
this one didn't get directed by Kenny B, so I'm gonna easily say Madam Web. But I
Yeah.
think the fact that because the early MCU movies kind of have a benefit of being like they weren't totally in the machine yet. It's still like they're probably not good. But the fact that Kenny B made a movie pre the total shit era, it's probably all right.
so, wait, so
Right.
speaking about the machine, I'm so sorry, I'm cutting you off, Kevin. But speaking of
That's
the
okay.
machine, are you so there's this book, I forgot it's written by a couple people, but it's like this big totem. It's basically like a Bible. It's the whole history of the MCU. Um,
In like a
and
positive light.
it's like in like an objective light. It's like obviously the people that wrote it like the movies, right?
Okay.
But it's like the whole history of the MCU. It's like this giant book that came out a few months ago. Um
No.
and something that the book talks about is how for the first like bunch of movies, all of the stuff, everything was accidental. Everything was an accident. Where and, like all the way through like the first Avengers movie, like
Yeah.
there was the Thanos tease at the end. There was
Well,
no
yeah,
intention for
yeah,
them
yeah.
at the time to actually make Thanos a villain.
Mhm.
It was just like a like an Easter egg for fans of comic books, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's like
And now Kevin Feige goes on sabbaticals in like Hawaii and plans the next 10 years of movies, and
yeah, it's
then
like
like poaches like indie filmmakers and makes them like bleed.
yeah, it's so
That's
like
cool.
there is like a definitive difference between how things were done early
Yeah,
on to
and
like
I
yeah.
feel it. I mean, I don't go back to watch those movies, but they made like 3 Iron Man movies before the fucking shit happened. Like,
Yeah.
so like it's like there's a clear for me personally, I don't have enough connection or care or really like need to go back and revisit some of those early ones. But I would say, like, on a just a fucking level of me understanding the way that these things work, I think those earlier ones, if any of like it's, I feel like the MCU issue probably started at a certain point and then really has continued on. And but yeah, so I would say Madam Web over Thor: The Dark World. But yeah,
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
I would take Madam Web, which
Okay.
is the thing with Thor, not Thor, Ant-Man. I remember watching that movie and just being bored, but also not getting anything out of it, and just
Yeah.
really, I think I left that early too, or something. I don't know if I fell asleep or whatever,
You
but
fell asleep, I remember.
something like that. But with Madam Web, and for me, I don't know. Everyone like takes film differently and whatever. For me, I'm not really in a position or interest in watching a movie and being like, this movie has to be perfect.
Yeah.
I don't really care. And a lot of this may come from me being a filmmaker and like making films. But when I'm watching films, it's like, what can I gain from this? And like pull out of it and put in my pocket, or like what
Right.
is interesting to me that I can like find from this, or what is just interesting to me to think about. And Madam Web to me is interesting to think about, whereas Ant-Man and the Quantumania has zero. There's just nothing for me there.
Right. Eternals.
That take this too. I don't
Yeah.
I remember watching Eternals in Texas because I was with my I was on a road trip and we
Okay.
looped back around in Texas and I was there for Thanksgiving, and I was with some family, and they were like, "You want to see the new Marvel movie?" And I was like, "Sure." Like I didn't want to say like no. I didn't. They were like they were trying to make, whatever. So I saw that with them, and I really did not like that movie.
Okay. Few more. I don't know if you remember this one. Captain America: The First Avenger, first Captain America movie.
Again, a lot of these like I haven't seen in a while. So it's like it's hard for me to be like, I'd probably go Madam Web just because I think Madam Web. I'm very fascinated by movies that exist. Because sometimes more than like actually watching them, but the fact that movies are made and they exist in like the fucking I don't know the galaxy that these exist in, these things are made. And I maybe I'd like that Captain America movie a little more. It might be a little more entertaining to me. But I think the fact that Madam Web, it maybe not. I haven't, again, I haven't seen it in forever. But maybe, but I think Madam Web will ultimately be more interesting.
Okay. Wrap the final 3 movies. These are like heavy hitters. These are like heavy hitters.
Just bounce them on.
Spider-Man: No Way Home.
This is better.
Okay. Thor: Ragnarok.
Oh, I hate Thor: Ragnarok. That movie sucks.
All right, last one. Avengers: Endgame.
Yeah, this one. I think Endgame is like bottom of the barrel. I think Endgame is one of the worst ones too. I think Endgame is the ultimate version. Like that is when they like reached maximum like machine.
Okay, and what if can I just flip it on you this way then? Or can you name like the MCU movie that you would take above this?
I think Doctor Strange. I do like Doctor Strange, the
Multiverse
of
Madness.
The Raimi one a little more. That's not a movie I
agree.
Necessarily would go out and say I like the movie either. I just do think it is a little better. Or I think Doctor Strange is an interesting character. I don't think it's I don't think it's not really going to be good either. I think there's some cool
Endgame sucks. Do you think Infinity War is at the bottom of the barrel as well?
Yeah. I don't, but I don't really like any of them. So but that's the thing is I like I think the first I'd take the first Guardians and the first 2 Guardians over this one.
Would you take Black Panther?
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I know Doug doesn't like that. I don't know. Black Panther's my favorite, but that's like
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. But like that's like what, 5 movies?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like
Black Panther's probably better. It's just I don't know. It's
I would say this is in like the top 5 Marvel movies that have come out in the past whatever many years.
5 years, 10 years.
It's weird. But yeah, I think it's really a kind of gross assessment of the superhero climate that we like live in, because we get like 3 of these a year minimum. There's going to be a Deadpool movie that comes out later this year that is getting raves on that trailer. That movie is going to be worse than this movie. Like I will bet you all my money that Deadpool movie directed by Sean Levy.
I don't know if I can watch that one. I'm gonna be. I haven't seen any of the Deadpool
Sean
movies.
Levy is going to be worse than Madam Web, and that's not what the fucking internet's going to tell you, right?
Yeah.
Internet's going to love that fucking movie. It will be worse than Madam Web. And actually, we talked about the location shit. That movie, there's stuff shot on location on that movie. It looks still like The Volume though, because they don't fucking know how to. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, right? They don't know how to light human beings.
They were like, oh shit, fuck. They hate that we're shooting on The Volume. Let's shoot on this fucking flat thing with the big 21st Century Fox logo, and they're shooting it in this really bad way that it still fucking looks like a green screen. So it just still looks bad. So they don't really know what they're doing over there. That movie is going to be horrible. The next Marvel movie is going to be horrible. The Fantastic Four movie, if that ever comes out, it's going to be bad. Like, we're in a bad fucking situation here.
Madam Web is my favorite comic book movie since the Batman.
Okay.
What
that
has come out
wasn't
since?
that long
What has
ago.
come out
but-
That wasn't long
yeah,
ago.
that's like 2 movies, but that's kind of a somewhat good transition into news if we're done talking about Madam Web. Unless
Well,
you
yeah,
guys
sure.
have more to say.
I mean,
Let me say one more thing.
Sure.
I do think it's interesting that, like I said, I do think the Sony stuff is more interesting, and I think it's to tie this all around to the superhero stuff. The fact that DC was kind of doing this a little just with like their popular characters, well, they were like making movies, and they were just like actually making movies with popular characters, and they were just received negatively, and now they're probably going to be more like the machine because of that. And we just live in such a weird time where like actual movie making is like not really required to be received as a good movie.
Right.
yeah.
And that leads to Madam Web being the worst movie ever made.
Yeah. Okay.
Segue.
We could wrap up Madam Web there. We're going to talk
Someone
about
really
the
cooked.
news. Like, yeah, he kind of did. Usual stuff. Share your feedback, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Rate the episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow our Twitter, our Instagram, our TikTok. Join the Discord if you want to
We're gonna get some
complain
hate
that we
mail for
like
those
Madam
clips.
Web too much. Yeah. And like I said, segue into the news. Our first bit of news is obviously the big superhero news. We don't have to talk about it for too long because we just talked about superheroes for over an hour. But Fantastic Four is set to arrive in July of 2025, and we have the confirmed cast, which will be Vanessa Kirby, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, and Ebon Moss-Backrack. How do you guys feel about the people in the movie? We don't have to talk about whether the movie is going to be good, but
I like
just the casting.
I like these. I mean, I'm a big Vanessa Kirby fan as an actress. I like Pedro Pascal and stuff. I think he's a good actor. Whatever. I know Owen doesn't, but
I'm mostly least excited for Joseph Quinn, if I could be honest. I get that this is probably bound to happen because of his like more recent roles and the fact that he's like a young up and comer. Like it makes sense that he would be put in something like this and is going to kind of like transition into having a bit of time in the spotlight, and will probably be like a regular guy. And I don't think he's like a bad actor. I just like, that's the least exciting name of this bunch by far to me. Like I think with Eben, I think that's like genuinely really cool because I've only seen him in like The Bear really, and I think he's my favorite part of that show by far. And I'm like, this is like a seemingly really cool guy, like really like dude who I really like.
He's the guy
like if he got more famous.
Yeah, he's the guy to be most excited for because this is like the biggest thing that he could probably get, you know. Vanessa Kirby was in a Mission Impossible movie this year, and Pedro Pascal was like in the biggest TV show of the year last year. So it's like
Marvel does this thing that both the Sonyverse bitches and DC didn't do or don't do, is even though, I mean, these names are relatively big, right? But Marvel likes to cast people when they're like 85% on the hill, right? They're almost at the peak of their thing. So they can get them a little cheaper, but it's like, these actors are going to be huge, right? But they're not casting, the big A-list names because those cost more, but they're going to cast like the B+ names, and they're going to become A+ names because of this superhero movie, right?
B+ is a really good way to put it. I think that Pedro Pascal is a B+ celebrity.
I think Pedro Pascal is reasonably more famous than the other 3 people in this.
Yeah, sure.
Like a good deal.
But I think he's on that, like, he's like really steeping close, and he's gonna it's gonna be a fucking home run. Like he's going to be one of the biggest names in Hollywood when that
for sure.
Fantastic Four movie come out. So they do a good job.
I think it's kind of inevitable that he will be. But...
Oh no, for sure. And that's they're catching him on this. Like he's the most expensive person here. But like when you're talking about the rest of the cast, they're also like they all have that kind of quality to them. And I think that's smart, but I also think it's kind of like the like gritty like evilness of the Marvel stuff where it's like the directors they get are like, hey, these guys won some awards for some movies that no one ever heard. Let's fucking, they're on the up.
Let's ruin their career.
But it's basically like
let's
they're
make
on
people
the
hate them.
they're on the up.
They're
They're on the up. We can afford to pay them a little less, and they're gonna it's like buying fucking trajectory.
Yeah.
I do think Evan. I haven't seen him in anything, but I just has like a kind of physicality person thing.
Great vibe.
He's the most
I mean, he has one of the
he's the most interesting.
I know you guys aren't going to watch The Bear, but like he genuinely is like such a likable.
Like I've seen
the show, you're like, oh, this guy is awesome.
And out of this 4, if I was casting a Fantastic Four, this would not be my 4, but if I had to pick one of these guys to be in if I was making Fantastic Four, I get 3 people, and I had to pick one of these 4, it would be him. I think he is pretty interesting. But I think you raise a good point about like because listen, we're done talking about Madam Web. I'm not gonna drag it on too much, but I do think like in terms of like the landscape of like or like the scope of their careers, like it's definitely like an issue worth discussing because, for example, like with Madam Web, then we get the people who are tweeting like, has Dakota Johnson ever been a good actress? Like, has she ever like acted well? And it's like, yes, she has. But like when you see people in movies like these, and like I said before about like where the script like really makes it hard to act well in these, which will, I'm not saying that'll be the case for Fantastic Four, but it's definitely a possibility. Like when people see them in the biggest roles of their careers and they do something like this, they're like, oh, that person's a shit actor, and like I don't care about watching more stuff that they're in, and that sucks. Like, and the comparison I guess I was originally making that I kind of forgot I was saying, but with the Marvel. And they cast them on like the B+ end. DC and the Sony people, I mean, the Dakota Johnsons of the world, like I would say she's probably B+ as well. But Sony can't afford the stuff that DC can, but they are basically going out to get like the biggest names they can.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the selling of Madam Web and Morbius and even Venom to an extent is like, hey, look at this name in this movie, right? Or it's like a different thing with Marvel, and you can, and it paid off for the Marvel in the beginning, and now they have the luxury of being like, we have this huge brand. But yeah, I do think it's interesting. I think the Fantastic Four is a really like that's a strong IP in terms of like what Marvel's been able to do with their like lesser IPs. This is a big hitter, and as like someone who like if you had to direct any superhero movie ever, like that's on the top of the list of like cool fucking superheroes to direct.
I agree.
I agree. It's such a shame for me because it's like I have no ounce of excitement in my body for this movie.
Yeah.
And I think these characters on a fucking
art
page
that they posted
cool as hell.
Looked cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like
I'm not gonna get excited for it.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. What I said earlier in this fucking podcast is that one, even though I didn't like Madam Web, I am more fucking, I believe in the Sony universe more than anything the MCU can bring. And they have characters like the Fantastic Four, and that's kind of sad. I do think that is.
Yeah. Next piece of news, kind of paired two together because they're both pieces of Ridley Scott news, which I knew you guys would be more excited about than Fantastic Four. First up, Ridley Scott is set to direct a Bee Gees movie. And second up, smaller piece of news, but exciting, is that early footage from Gladiator 2 has reportedly blown execs away at Paramount. So
Oscar
more
run.
Gladiator 2.
Oscar
more
run?
Gladiator 2.
Oscar run?
Listen, if
Best
Paul
director
Mescal,
Ridley 88.
yeah.
I mean, if there's any movie that's gonna get Ridley Scott it's gonna be Gladiator 2.
Imagine him going up there.
No, that'd be. I think I could see a Ridley Scott Best Director nomination. I don't think I could see him winning, but
I mean, it depends. I mean, the movie's not out yet.
It depends.
No, I know, but it's the same. It's the same year as
year.
Dune.
It's a bad year for Dune.
Oh yeah. Forgot about Dune.
But it would. I think early predictions. It'd be really cool to see that.
It'd be cool if that was listen, there's going to be a lot more movies that come out and there'll be different names in the conversation. But if it ends up being a race between like Ridley Scott and Denis, that would be a pretty cool Best Director race.
Yeah. Fucking he should white.
Well, yeah, sure. But you know what I mean.
This is kind of off topic and we can get really in like 10 seconds. but every time I think about the movies that are fucking coming out this year, I'm like, this might be the most like I'm like, we're back. Like, this is about to be the greatest year of all time movies ever. Like, every fucking movie that I'm thinking about that comes out this year is like, oh, this could be the fucking greatest movie ever.
Yeah, no, I'm
And
very
it's like,
excited for a lot of
it's
movies.
crazy. It's
Which is crazy because we
insane.
just had a year of like
Very good.
notable directors
Very good.
making like you know real like directors that we care about all putting out movies in the same year, and yet I'm still really
It feels like
excited
this
for a
is
lot of what's
better.
happening this year. I'm like, we're just getting
Yeah, I think
more of
obviously like
it.
it depends on your taste and who you care about more. But for me, I feel like this is so huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for Ridley, we had the Bee Gees movie, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I talked about this a little on TikTok, and my fucking perspective is basically like, I'm sure this will be fine. I'm sure this will be good.
But you just don't want to see this.
This is the thing, and I said this. It's like Ridley Scott is what 84.
Yeah.
Way too old.
Not a lot of time left.
84, right? So, when they announced Bomb, I was like, holy shit! Like, this sounds awesome, right? And he's 84, right? So there's not too many more. It's not too like who knows? He could fucking live for another 10 years. I don't know.
Live forever.
He could just live forever. That's not normally how things go, right?
Yeah.
So when it's announced that he's gonna make a Bee Gees movie, it's more or less like I said this in my video. I said this is like a selfish thing for me, where it's like I want him to be spending his last days making movies that I care about.
No, I get that,
but I'm sure this movie will be good.
Yeah.
I heard there was some report of like this is a movie that they want to make soon. So, and he's like in talks. So this movie just could never happen. And, or he could make this movie like soon, very soon.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is that I saw you mention when you were talking about it that you have not listened to a single Bee Gees song more than once, which is I don't believe that. I don't believe that you've only heard "Staying Alive" once in your life. There's just no way.
I meant like I don't know what I phrased it as, but I'm like I kind of was like I've heard some of them songs, but it's like that's like I'm not playing the Bee Gees like every other day.
No, yeah,
like,
fair enough.
I don't know the last time I've like went on Spotify and like clicked a Bee Gees song. So it's like the thing is like I don't know what artist.
What if he was doing a Yeet movie?
That'd be so stupid. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's a musical artist where I'm like
the Ken Carson biopic.
Yeah,
by Ridley Scott.
I'm really happy Ridley Scott is making this. But at the end of the day, if this is a movie that he really cares about, like more power to him, and I'm sure it will be really great because he's somehow at 84 in the way and the quickness he is able to make movies. He is putting them out like with the best of them. So I'm sure this will be good. It's again from a selfish perspective. It's like Ridley, we're working with like we're working with shared time here, right? We're not supposed to be alive this old, right? So all the time we have here is like extra, really.
Yeah.
So let's use these, and the fact that he is working and the fact that he wants to work is like the biggest gift of all, and he doesn't have to be. He could fucking ride off in the sunset and be totally fine. So the fact that he's even making movies is the coolest thing ever. But personally, again, I really want to see Bomb. If Bomb gets made and we get a really cool actor, I'll be set. But this Bee Gees movie is probably good. I'll probably like give it 4 stars. Who fucking knows? I don't know. It's like I feel negative about it, but it's like I don't know. I think it makes sense in my head.
Austin Butler casting news. Austin Butler on his road to stardom. 2 pieces of Austin Butler casting news. He's in talks for a role in Ari Aster's next film, Eddington, and he is also being eyed to star in a new thriller directed by Darren Aronofsky.
We're back, guys. We're so back.
Thank God they didn't make
this
him.
This is also coming off of the Dune 2 reactions in which
they're like, he's the GOAT.
Austin Butler steals the show and is like a generational villain performance.
I checked the sources on all of those quotes that whatever account posted that. They were all fake fucking. Those are not real critics.
Right,
but
but it's like people who watch the movie at least.
I said this on Twitter. I was like, all these Dune reactions. like go in one
Yeah,
ear
they
out the
don't,
other
like-
because like who are these fucking people? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
They don't mean,
But
but that's the
that's
thing
fine.
is
It's
like they
cool to
don't
see,
mean
but it's
anything
like-
in terms of like them being critics, but they do mean something in terms of like
I
these are
wish
people
I
who watched
had
the
more
movie and
people.
enjoyed it, and
like,
I'm a
more,
person who's
I wish
gonna
there
watch
was
the
more
movie and
critics where I'm
enjoy it.
like anything they say matters like in the like least bit. Like where I'm like, oh, that's an interesting like this
We have
guy
to start
did-
getting invited to these premieres. This is what's just happening.
Well, I'm
have to
just
get
saying,
this-
like, to a point where, like, not even that it was like makes like it changes my day at all. But I wish I would just like know a guy like, on the internet that I
Yeah.
follow, and I'm like,
Would
oh,
love to
he
just,
said this
like-
about Dune, like that early, and like, oh, that's interesting. That actually, like, I'm excited, maybe a little more or whatever. I
Well,
can't.
even if
none of
like
these
Cinema
words,
Joe or
none of
Sydney
these
were getting in,
words mean
I had like
anything to me.
a
Well, that's the
vibe
thing.
for
If
their
Sydney's-
taste.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. If
Yeah.
Sydney is Joe, like, again, I have no vibe. Like someone sent, I think it was movie review man in our
Shut up.
fantasy football group chat, and he sent a fucking Dune 2 thing, and I clicked on it, and I found this guy's letterbox, and I found his fucking Skinamarink review, and I said these these fucking words are null, bro. These
Yeah,
these,
yeah,
these
no, that's
the
fair.
most pretentious shit I've seen in years. And I was like,
Yeah, but Austin
don't
Butler
care
in an Ari Aster movie
doing
and a Darren Aronofsky movie.
yeah, no, that rocks.
Exciting.
Shout out Austin
Yeah.
Butler.
let's back to this
Um,
stuff.
I'm so
Yeah.
excited for
The Darren
this
Aronofsky movie? Whale
this Ari
2.
Aster movie. I'm very
Oh,
excited
yeah,
for
no,
Aster
Ari
movie.
Aster movie is going to be good. Darren Aronofsky movie, I'll be skeptical, but Austin Butler is a good person. I don't know. Like the thing is like I like.
What if
Brendan
I'm more
Fraser,
excited for the
obviously, so
Aaron
like
Aronofsky movie?
that's okay. That's
okay.
I mean he's it's
I
a
don't
it's
even-
a Darren
have I seen
Aronofsky
it-
thriller
have I
and he's
seen a Darren
made
Aronofsky movie?
good thriller. You haven't?
I
You've never
don't
seen
know.
one?
One?
You mean
I
Black
like-
Swan?
No, I
I
said
what's
yeah.
one?
I said one as in like one of his movies.
Yeah, I
what
haven't
else did he
seen
do?
one.
He did no. Have you seen Noah?
Now, why is that the one you jumped to? You said Black
think-
Swan and then you went to Noah.
I think my
Why?
dad. I think my dad's seen Noah, but I don't think I've seen Noah.
Oh,
That's- That's really.
Oh,
So I
funny.
think
Also, are we
I'm
gonna-
have seen an Aronofsky.
Are we gonna talk about Dune stuff on this podcast?
I-
was not including Dune.
Okay.
Stuff
I think we
because
should
it's
talk
like
about
a-
it in the episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just
Um,
wondering if we were gonna because it is. I think now it is like thoroughly crossed into
Yeah,
just
but
being news.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
But
but
I think
I say we just leave it
Okay,
out for
okay.
now.
I
Very well,
think
very
it
well.
will be a big
And it-
topic
we-
of discussion.
the people who
as
know
well.
the people who know what you're hinting at know
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
hinting at, and the people who don't,
and the people who know what they're hinting at.
Yeah. Next piece of news is speaking of hints. This is what we hinted at the beginning of the episode.
Oh yeah,
Sam Rockwell,
Oh, yeah.
Haley Lou Richardson, Michael Pena,
Oh,
Zazie Beetz, and Juno
yeah.
Temple to star in Gore Verbinski's Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. The film centers on a man from the future who must recruit a precise combination of people to save the world from the terminal threat of a rogue artificial intelligence.
He's back.
We're
He's
back.
fucking back. Also,
It's been 8
sick-ass-
years, correct?
8 fucking years. They did
Yeah.
this. He made a cure for wellness in 2016, and then he went fucking ghost.
Yeah. Then they
Yeah.
locked him the fuck
they,
up.
they fucking
They
threw the
literally
key
arrested
away.
him. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we talked about this on the Argyle podcast where it's like I haven't seen Sam Rockwell in anything, but I like
Yeah.
him.
Now you
Like,
get
I
to
was
see
like,
him. And
oh, this guy is
also,
cool. Like I think he
Haley
could,
Lou Richardson,
if he
one
was
of
in a-
my favorite
if he
people.
was in a movie I liked. Yeah, she's good as well. She's in
like
Split.
she fucked.
Is
Um,
it? Is it? Did you say Zazie Beats too, or did I?
Zazie
mishear
Beetz
that?
is in it as
Yeah,
well.
that's
Yeah,
cool.
Michael
That's
Pena,
cool.
Juno Temple,
Yep,
who
yep.
listen, you guys will never watch Ted Lasso in your lives. I think Juno Temple is so likable. I think she fucking rocks. I don't know what like her role in this would be, but whatever. I think she's awesome.
Yeah, no, but
like this is a cool
uh,
cast. From
cool
start.
ass cast. The premise, especially coming out like now, being is sick. Like fucking Gore Verbinski's coming out of the ashes to defeat AI. Here
Yeah.
we go. I don't know. This is like the best birthday present ever. Let's
Yeah.
go, Gore Verbinski. We're back.
Not to mention,
Let's
to
go.
piggyback off that, our next piece of news is also good cast in a movie directed by somebody that Owen likes. Ewan McGregor and Anne Hathaway to
Oh.
star in a new untitled film from David Robert
Yes.
Mitchell.
The
All I do
dinosaur
is
movie.
win.
Are we talking, bro? Anne
This-
Hathaway and Ian McGregor and David Robert Mitchell
Is
dinosaur movie.
this the dinosaur movie? Because I don't.
This is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it was announced a while back. It was like Anne Hathaway, David Robert Mitchell are making a dinosaur movie. And then fucking crickets for like ever, and then it was like It Follows 2, and then it was like we're never getting that dinosaur movie, and then boom, Ewan fucking McGregor.
Comes in and
So
saves the day.
this movie, like, rest in fucking piss, Jurassic World. Like,
No, yeah,
this movie's
it's so over for them.
This movie's about to rip.
Listen,
Super happy.
If we get a good dinosaur movie, I will be insufferable. I'll be so happy.
This movie's gonna be so
I'm
good.
the world's
And
foremost
it's kind of gonna be
podcaster with
I
an
could
interest in
see
dinosaurs.
this happening. You know how, like, when, not to maybe the Sixth Sense, well, sort of. Stay with me for a second.
Yeah,
like when Avatar: The Way of Water came out. So Doug saying hello. And it was like, damn, they did water so good. And then like the fucking next water movie from your random shitto movie company came out, and they're like, everyone like looked at it like differently, right?
Yeah.
I just like, maybe it's different, right? But like, if this movie is as good as I think it will be I just think like there's no way anyone's gonna see the next Jurassic World movie and give two shits, right? There's just no way. Like, because the thing with Jurassic World is this, like, it's a cool dinosaur thing, and there was no other dinosaur content, right? But if you just add one good dinosaur movie, it's wraps, because they have nothing. They have nothing to their name besides like.
Yo, wait. What if his dinosaur movie is like the scientifically accurate dinosaurs, and they're like big chicken feathers?
I would love that so much. They tried
awesome.
to do that. They tried to do that a little bit in the newest Jurassic World movie, which like they kind of failed miserably at because. And listen, I'm not going to be a fucking nerd on our movie podcast about dinosaurs, but I happen to be a person who took a dinosaur class in college because I have a special interest in dinosaurs, and I think they're really cool.
Right.
And they didn't do it very well in Jurassic World. That's all I'll say about that. They you can't just put feathers on a dinosaur and then tell us that you made accurate dinosaurs. That's not how that works.
This is super nerdy, but I really I want them to go back, and people are going to call me fucking sacrilegious for saying this. I want there to be like an edit of the Tree of Life, where they go back and they redo all the CG for the dinosaurs and make them like accurate.
Like, George Lucas, those fuckers. What the
fuck? That's like the only. I think that
is it time. There's dinosaurs in the Tree of Life.
Yeah, wait.
Yeah, you haven't seen it?
Yeah,
no, but I got this
dinosaur
bad boy
fucking
right here.
Stomps on Brad Pitt's house. It's fucking crazy.
I'm just waiting to pop it in.
No, yeah, there's dinosaurs in the Tree of Life.
Brother,
well, if you told me that, I would have popped it in earlier.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This is kind of like a bad way to sell the Tree of Life.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's more to the movie.
I'm gonna be honest.
Terrence Malick movies.
You shouldn't go into it for dinosaurs.
No, listen. Obviously, I'm just kidding around. There's I was gonna watch it soon anyway.
Imagine
on that, but
where the fucking dinosaurs?
They show up kind of.
They're in the movie, yes, but it's like
It's
like, I don't give a fuck about Brad Pitt's kid. Where are the dinosaurs?
Okay. Next piece of news: Elizabeth Olsen and Charles Melton to star in Todd Solondz's Love Child. The film centers on a woman stuck in a loveless marriage, but when a handsome stranger appears, her 11-year-old son hatches a plan to get rid of his father.
Can we get Owen to play the 11-year-old son?
How many? You know what? I think we have a serious problem with
Charles Melton.
Too many Todds in Hollywood. I think there's too many Todds.
Do you think they're all
Todd Field is gone, so we can scratch him off.
Right, but I've just never met a Todd in real life, and yet there are multiple Todds in Hollywood. Just a lot.
You've never met a Todd in real life before?
No, I don't think
so. With it in Hollywood.
I don't think I know.
I have a lot of friends.
They're all in Hollywood.
I just don't think I know a Todd. Anyway, do you guys like Todd Solondz? I haven't seen any of his movies, but I want to watch that movie.
I don't know him by name.
I don't know who the fuck that is.
Oh really? Oh, he's the guy that made Happiness, that like Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh yeah.
He makes a lot of like movies. Yeah, I haven't seen any of his movies, but apparently they're all a little bit strange and good.
Oh, from the quirked up mind of that guy.
Right. Well, not like that. He's like has an actual quirked up mind, not like a
quirked up. Remember, Kevin, when you texted in our group chat last night and we're like, can we make this like a 60-minute episode if possible?
Yeah, stuff happened. No, but I said that because I'm going to the movies soon, but that's okay. I have two more quick pieces. I'm seeing Perfect Days. which I'm very excited about. New Wim Wenders movie. Christopher
You
Nolan
gotta
says
pack
he
the
would love
shit
to
with
make a
me,
horror
dog.
film.
Yeah, he's
Christopher
just
Nolan said
talking.
he's looking for an exceptional idea for a horror. It's never gonna
He
happen.
He's
should-
looking
yeah, he's
for an
just-
exceptional
he's
I
just-
idea.
don't think
He
he'll
just
ever
shit
do that.
talking, bro. He's not doing.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything.
He
Like,
should. It'd be the best movie he's ever made.
Well,
It'd be cool.
he
But
just-
it's like
you know.
he's just
He
yapping.
literally made a horror movie this year.
He also said he would make a Star Wars movie. He's just yapping.
Right,
Like,
yeah. I didn't think it was really a piece of news, but I didn't know if you guys had something
if
you
he
wanted
was
to say
really a
about
baller, he would make the next Sony fucking superhero movie. So.
he would make El Muerte.
it. Sure, whatever that was.
He would make Madam Web 2.
Last piece of news. This is fucking stupid. I don't even know why I put this in here. Actually, I think I put it in here because I saw people like memeing it on Twitter, and I thought the jokes were pretty funny. But Barry Keoghan to star in a film from Johan Rank about the final days of Saddam Hussein, and he's set to play the American soldier tasked with guarding him.
He should have
just saw
played
people-
the
I saw
other
people
role.
making the jokes about him playing Saddam Hussein, and I was like, "This is kind of."
That would have been so crazy.
What's
If he
going
was
on
like
with Barry Keoghan?
Saltburn,
He doesn't pick
And
like good
then-
roles.
and then
I don't. Yeah, listen. I don't want to see a movie about this. Never mind. Do I want to see Barry Keoghan playing the American soldier that is?
I
guarding
was so
Saddam
like
Hussein? I just
pro
don't really.
Barry for like a year, and then he started being in more movies.
Yeah.
And then it's like, why
I mean,
are these the
listen.
movies that you're in?
Listen, I don't think he's. I think there will be plenty more movies in his career that he is a part of that I am excited for. But I think he'll also make a lot of ones that I don't care about in that
Like,
same
He
run.
was in The Killing of the Sacred Deer, The Green
Right.
Knight, and then it was The Batman, and then it was.
I
like,
loved him
oh,
in Banshees. I think he's amazing in Banshees.
Uh-huh.
You know,
and it was like, oh, this is like an interesting up and coming guy, and then like he's
He's so
Yeah.
good in The Green Knight. He was a
right.
little freak in that movie.
What's the Owen doesn't like Banshees, right?
No.
Right. Doug, do you like it? Because I
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw that like 3 times in theaters.
you know, just making sure. It seemed like there was a little bit of a it seemed like there was some tension.
I don't think
there as
Owen
to-
watched it. I don't think Owen saw
Whoa, I feel like I'm Doug right now. What the fuck? I feel like I'm Madam Web. What the fuck is
Right.
going on?
Okay. That's
Like
what
I'm Madam Web in 03.
All right, guys.
that's the last piece of news. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up
What
there.
is
We can come
happening?
back
What is
next
going
week
on?
for your episode 55. We're gonna be talking about
Holy
drive away
shit,
dolls. So
Yeah.
we'll
Oh.
see you later.